source for Israel in English.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York City, and it's 2 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here is your roundup of the latest developments. And we open, of course, with Iran, where the death toll in anti-government protests continues to grow. Now, the protests have entered their third week, with new reports out of Iran confirming at least 2,000 killed and over 10,000 arrested. Demonstrations, strikes, and civil disobedience continue across the country. This despite the regime's crackdown, signaling deep and widespread unrest. Now, the White House says that after several warnings were ignored by the regime, diplomacy still remains an option, but it wants Tehran not to underestimate President Trump's readiness to use military force. Inside the administration, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Vice President J.D. Vance is leading a push to give diplomatic talks with Iran a chance before any military strike. However, U.S. officials say President Trump has not made a final decision, but is currently leaning towards military action, with some scenarios including striking first and talking later. Now, White House spokesperson Carolyn Leavitt told Fox News on Monday that while President Trump prioritizes diplomacy, he is unafraid to use lethal force if necessary. Leavitt said Iran is sending quite different signals privately than it is publicly, indicating the regime fully understands Trump's resolve. Now, she highlighted the destruction of Iran's nuclear weapons program as evidence of U.S. military might, warning that Tehran should not miscalculate. Reports from Washington say President Trump is examining final plans on proposals on what could be done to help the Iranians, with the central question being how and when. Now, the administration considering a range of strong responses, including airstrikes, while still leaving diplomacy on the table.
Well, I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table, and airstrikes would be one of the many, many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately, and I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. However, with that said, the president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary, and nobody knows that better than Iran.
Now, President Trump did announce last night on his Trump Truth social media that, effective immediately, any country that is doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. Well, the Chinese embassy to the U.S. tweeted in response that China, which is Iran's largest trade partner by a large margin, will firmly oppose any illicit unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction, and will take all necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. And there was this comment from a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson in Beijing.
中方在关税问题上的立场非常明确，关税战没有赢家。中方将坚定维护自身的正当合法权益。中方希望并支持伊朗保持国家稳定。我们一贯反对干涉别国内政，反对在国际关系中使用或威胁使用武力。希望各方多做有利于中东和平稳定的事。
Now, meanwhile, Iran is escalating its rhetoric, at least publicly, against the U.S. and Israel. The Iranian Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi claiming that Iran has obtained extensive documents and evidence linking the recent unrest across the country to the U.S. and Israel, claiming that Mossad agents are attempting to direct such terrorist acts. Now, Araghchi said at a press conference that beginning on June 8th, terrorists and armed groups carrying weapons entered protest sites and opened fire on police and civilians with the aim of steering demonstrations towards violence and chaos. The Iranian minister saying Iran does not seek war, but is fully prepared for it, adding the regime is ready for serious and pragmatic negotiations with the U.S., but the talks must be based on fairness, equality, and mutual respect, rather than unilateral pressure or directives from Washington.
رسانه‌های اسرائیل پر است از ادعاهایی که انجام شده که اونها مشغول طراحی عملیات در ایران هستند. آقای پومپئو که فرد کمی نیست، رئیس سازمان CIA بوده در زمان آقای ترامپ. ایشون توییت زده و میگه که من سال جدید رو به ایرانیانی که در خیابان‌ها هستند و به مأمورین موساد که در کنار اونها حرکت میکنند تبریک میگم. یعنی یک اعتراف صریح که مأمورین موساد تلاش کردند که این جریان تروریستی رو هدایت بکنن.
And overnight, the IDF spokesperson, Brigadier General Effie Defrin, tweeted this comment, saying, in recent days, many rumors have spread against the backdrop of the situation in Iran. As was clarified previously, the IDF is prepared for defense and on alert for surprise scenarios if required. The protests in Iran are an internal matter. And as the regime intensifies this crackdown on protesters in Iran, Iranians around the world are taking to the streets, demanding change and urging the international community to act. From London to Paris, Washington to Germany, demonstrations are growing louder by the day. Protesters gathered outside the Iranian embassy in London, voicing support for demonstrators back home as Iran entered another week of deadly unrest.
Iranian people are hostage by a terrorist government for over 75 hours now, and we are disconnected from our loved families and from our sisters and brothers inside Iran, which we know that at the moment they are getting massacred and killed by these terrorists, by machine guns, and we want the world to hear our voice and help us.
And joining us now for more is Dr. Mordechai Kedar. He's a Middle East expert with Bar-Ilan University. And we have IDF Reserves Major Elliot Shodoff, political and military analyst. And Moti Kedar, I want to start with you. As we said, Iran now confirming over 2,000 protesters killed. There's been a report just in the last hour or so by an opposition group saying as many as 12,000 could have been killed. Now, in previous years, we have seen the regime successfully tamper down these protests by using this kind of brute force. By your assessment, would that be successful this time if there is no external intervention? Or is the regime simply going to be able to kill enough people to send people off the streets?
No, I don't think that the street itself, by itself, can bring the big change of toppling the regime. The regime is too powerful. The regime is armed to its teeth. The regime is determined to stay in power, whatever the cost is. And as we see, so many people are being shot dead. And therefore, only external power, only external pressure can bring the real change. Not domestic one. Forget it. The people, as determined as they are, as angry as they are, as desperate as they are, as massacred as they are, they cannot bring the real change by themselves. And everybody who wants to see a real change in Iran should start acting.
All right. Well, Elliot, you heard Moti's view there, which a view many people share. But the question is, what are the options? Let's start with the U.S. We heard President Trump. There's this debate inside the administration. Some voices saying, let's try to negotiate first. President Trump going to tariffs as a potential, adding on to the sanctions already on Iran, secondary tariffs on countries. Are those actions enough, or some kind of military action needed? And if so, what kind of military action?
Okay, so first of all, tariffs are certainly not enough. There's no question that is not going to bring down the regime. The interesting question is when President Trump says he's going to negotiate over what? The regime is not going to negotiate its own demise. So if the Trump administration is going to negotiate with them over peripheral issues, they'll give in because survival is their primary concern right now. Likewise, the question of military strikes, and let's say airstrikes for all intents and purposes, if they're going to be done for signaling, in other words, to let the Iranians know that America is not happy with their behavior in order to get them to change it, is also going to be an absolute failure. The only intervention, and I agree with Dr. Kedar, the only intervention that is going to work is intervention that will weaken the regime, because just to summarize my view on it, which is in perfect parallel, revolutions, uprisings of this type succeed when the rebels or revolutionaries have more people willing to die than the regime is willing and able to kill. In this case, the regime is willing and able to kill lots and lots of people. They're not backing down. So unless it's weakened by military force, and again, tariffs are going to just take too long, unless it's weakened by a military attack, going after its centers of power, the IRGC, the government and its control apparatus, it's simply not going to work.
Dr. Kedar, I want to come back to you, though, that even if military action that weakened the regime would be taken, what actually would play out here in terms of toppling the regime? I mean, there is the model of Syria where you have a leader that fled to Russia, and a very sort of obviously a military that was being propped up from abroad. That's really not the case in Iran. I mean, what could emerge in the coming weeks, even if there is military action? Do you give any credence to the theory, for example, that some elements within the Iranian military could take over and try to make a new regime? And if so, would that be an answer?
First of all, the West, means United States, Israel, and many other countries should, first of all, bomb communication centers, because a state is based on communications, orders, regulations, and all kinds of things which are being done by communications. The world has to get rid of the Iranian regime's abilities to communicate within itself. This is first thing. Second thing, headquarters of the IRGC, of the Basij, or the Tel'at, means the intelligence. The regime must feel that the regime is targeted by external powerful power. This is second thing. Third thing is, I believe that in the West, like in America and Israel, they have list of the people of the IRGC. Israel and the United States should announce that each and every one of these people will be accused for murdering people if they are ever caught everywhere in the world, and to give asylum to those who will defect. And this is actually the way how to weaken the regime, by causing people from the security organizations to defect. And this is something which they will not be able to sustain afterwards. People of religion, means religious authorities who will start to speak against the regime, might also hasten the process of demise of the regime, because without the religious aura and the religious seal of approval, they cannot survive as a regime. Therefore, it has to be a complex of steps which will be taken by the United States, by Israel, and by other normal countries which are preaching for human rights day and night. Let them do the job against this vicious totalitarian regime which for 47 years occupied Iran and occupied the Iranian people. It is time to work, not only to talk.
Right. And Elliot, you've heard Dr. Kedar outline a series of proactive steps, which I'm sure certainly on the basis of the U.S. taking these steps, you'd agree. But what about Israel taking more proactive steps, as Dr. Kedar suggests? Because so far the government is treading carefully. You probably heard mentioned earlier Ayal Zamir, the IDF spokesperson putting out a statement saying that the protests in Iran are an internal matter. Obviously doesn't want to give Iran an excuse to attack Israel, to try to sort of shift the focus to an Iranian-Israeli conflict. So how far do you think Israel should be going in some of the steps that, for example, Dr. Kedar has suggested? What are the potential risks involved if it does?
I think the potential risks have more to do with success or failure of the Iranian uprising revolution than in retaliation. In other words, Israel alone doesn't have the capability to do the kind of massive attacks that would be required to weaken the regime, to force it to be brought down. And here, also, I think it's important to emphasize the idea is not for the attacks to bring down the regime. The idea is for the attacks to weaken the regime enough so the protesters and the rebels will be able to bring it down from within. So there's truth to that. It's an attempt to give the internal forces enough strength to do it. They're already blaming Israel for it. Giving them additional excuses to do that will also work to their benefit. And here, I agree that a Shiite in particular religious statement, not all Shiites are Khomeinists, a strong religious statement from anti-Khomeiniist Shiites would certainly go a long way to weakening some of that legitimacy. But here I think that the order is America, the West, and Israel. Israel's certainly in there. Israel has capabilities, but unless it's being led by much more powerful forces, military forces, and that's the United States, I don't think an Israeli military strike will be successful.
No, that's not what I'm sorry, Elliot. What I was actually pressing you on the point is, if the U.S. decides to take action, should Israel at this stage join in that action?
Yes.
At the risk
absolutely.
of a retaliation by the Iranian forces?
Okay, then I misunderstood your question. The answer is absolutely yes. First of all, the Iranians have already threatened Israel with retaliation if America strikes, whether Israel joins or not. So if the threat is already on the table, there's no reason to sit passively and let it stay there. Every additional strike that would help is certainly a move in the right direction, and it's worth the risk. If seriously can bring down the regime, and I'll go way out on a limb here, it's worth risking the retaliation and even suffering the retaliation if that's the end of the Iranian regime.
I want to talk about what that constitutes the end of the Iranian regime, because, Dr. Kedar, there has been some suggestions the Ayatollah Khamenei should be personally targeted. For example, potentially, we've seen that President Trump likes to strike, as you might say, is at the head of a snake, as he did with Nicolas Maduro, but it didn't fully bring down the regime. How much effective would be to simply taking out the supreme leader at this stage? Is that a target worth having, and what would be the impact?
Well, definitely it will have a big impact on the people, because the supreme leader is not viewed only as a leader. He's viewed as some kind of mediator between the deity and the people, according to the 12th Shi'i belief. But here we have to add something very important. The rebellion, of course, now is against the regime. But behind the scenes, there is another kind of protests against the state. Means already in the Ahwaz area, the Arab-speaking area, people are talking about independence. Means leaving Iran, dismemberment of Iran. People in the Kurdish area are talking about independence, and they have good army, and they might do it. There are the Baluchis in the southeast part of Iran. They are Sunnah, they are not Shia. They want independence. And very possibly can be that after the regime will be toppled, the state will be shattered to pieces, just like what happened with the Soviet Union or Yugoslavia or Czechoslovakia. The same thing, because ethnicities never became one nation. There is no Iranian nation. there is Iranian citizens, but not a nation. There are many nations in Iran. There are Persians, there are Ahwazis with Arabs, there are Baluchis, Turkmenis, there are Kurds, there are Azerbaijanis, and there are like 40 more groups, small groups like Bakhtiaris and Gilyakis and Kashkais and Luris and Mazandaranis and Caspianis and many more. This might be the fate of Iran after the regime collapses, that the whole state will shatter to pieces. And maybe normal states will come out from the ashes or out from the ruins of Iran. And this is the time to do it, because everyone wants freedom, not only freedom from the mullahs, they want freedom from the state itself.
All right. I just wanted to clarify with you, is that an outcome that you think the West or Israel should view positively, a breakup of Iran? Because there could be consequences, as we've seen in other places, where something, I won't say more radical will emerge, but equally as radical, although based on maybe a different, for example, Islamic ideology.
Look, the same thing happened with the Soviet Union. When the communist regime fell, the state was fragmented to 15 states. This actually what happened in the Soviet Union. The same thing in Yugoslavia. But what I'm saying is Israel and other countries should not say that this is our goal. Our goal is not to fragment Iran. Our goal is to get rid of the regime. If the state or if the minorities decide to leave the union or to leave the state and to establish a separate states, it's their own decision. We are not interfering in this issue. This is why we should act only against the regime, because the regime actually is using this issue of dismemberment as some kind of threat to the Iranians. Hey, if you get rid of us, the whole state will fall apart. And that's why we shouldn't say it. Don't tell them that I told you. And Israel or United States or whoever should only say that we are against the regime, not against the construct of the state of Iran.
Right, well, we'll keep that between us and the viewers of ILTV. I want to thank Mordechai Kedar for joining us. I do want to ask Elliot Chodoff to stay with us. I'm going to look at another item, but I am going to say goodbye to Mordechai Kedar. Elliot Chodoff, could you stay with us? I just want to get your view on another item. And moving on, back in Israel, the IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, has unveiled a new multi-year plan designed to rebuild and strengthen the military after more than 2 years of war. Now, the plan is called Chosen. It will guide the IDF from 2026 through 2030 and is based on the lessons learned from the October 7th Hamas attack and the fighting that followed. Now, speaking at a home front leadership conference, Zamir said the army must operate on two parallel tracks, continuing active operations on all fronts while simultaneously rebuilding its force and readiness for future conflicts. The plan is built around three core pillars: immediate readiness for war, a return to full operational fitness, and preparation for future security challenges. It draws on wartime lessons, internal IDF investigations, guidance from the political leadership, the decisions by the Chief of Staff. The plan expected to be finalized by April 1st, with implementation beginning after Passover, subject to the security situation. Zamir described the plan as critical to ensuring the IDF is prepared for the next war while still fighting the current one. I want to go back to Elliot Chodoff, a IDF veteran, of course, and I want to get your sense from you on the lessons. There's so many lessons, but is there some core principle that you see that the IDF has had to have taken away from just the past October 7th and everything that followed after the past 2 years that really in some ways is a kind of fundamental rethinking?
I'd say there are two. One, I'll say higher and one lower in terms of scale. The higher one has to do with management, managing a war which, in my opinion, was fought very well on the ground level, but managed very poorly on the high level, militarily, manpower-wise, equipment-wise, which is why so much rebuilding has to be done now, and planning forward. And this three-tier plan of the chief of staff, I think, is an excellent idea. It's demanded. It's something that's been missing with realism for at least a couple of decades. And the second, I'll say on the lower level of scale, not lower importance, but lower in scale, is that there's been an enormous learning curve in what I call the oral law, if you will. In other words, not in the manuals, not in the documents, but we now have a cadre, a generation of commanders from the field. I'm talking about platoon, company, battalion level commanders who, for the first time in their lives, have had this kind of combat experience and have learned it on the job and are now passing it on as part of the training. So, and this is something that I've been aware of and I've been tracking personally. We're seeing the enhancement of knowledge, the development of knowledge that was learned on the battlefield intensely, and again, a very, very sharp learning curve upward that is now being transmitted to the military. So I think in the coming years, we're going to see a tremendous improvement in training and exercises in terms of realism. And the only thing I can hope for is that continues into the future. These things tend to fade over time.
All right, Elliot Chodorov, thank you so much. Major Elliot Chodorov, thank you so much for joining us on ILTV.
My pleasure.
Let's move to some economic news. Israel is doubling down on high-tech investment even as global venture capital markets slow. The Israeli Innovation Authority announced today that roughly $450 million has been invested in Israeli venture capital funds through the government-backed Yozma Fund. That investment is expected to leverage more than $2 billion in total fundraising. Officials say the move is designed to stabilize Israel's startup ecosystem, attract institutional investors, and ensure continued funding for early-stage and deep technology companies. So far, institutional investors have committed hundreds of millions of dollars across 11 Israeli venture capital funds, while an additional deep tech program has approved funding for 9 more funds focused on areas like semiconductors, biotechnology, quantum technologies, and advanced materials. Finance and innovation leaders say the program strengthens Israel's economic resilience, supports long-term growth, and keeps Israeli innovation competitive and even during challenging market conditions. The Yozma Fund is expected to continue investing through 2026. And now some weather news. Israel is in the midst of an extreme weather event this morning as stormy conditions continue to batter large parts of the country. The Israeli Meteorological Service has issued a red alert warning of dangerous conditions from a powerful storm that began overnight and is expected to continue this evening. Heavy rain and unusually strong winds will reach up to 110 kilometers an hour along the coast, and of course flooding in multiple areas. Well, our Devo Klein ventured outside during a break in the rain, and she filed this report.
Hey Kalev, it's good to be with you. I'm standing here in Rishon LeZion, which is in central Israel. As you can see behind me, there is a break in the clouds, which means there's a little bit less rain right now, but don't let that fool you, as just a few hours ago, this entire area was completely drenched. Massive rainstorms blew through the area, but what's picking up right now especially is the wind. As you can see, reports are indicating that winds have reached up to 90 kilometers per hour, which is insane. You can see the hair blowing around and everything, but we actually have some really sad news and heartbreaking reports of an elderly woman who died in Shu'afat, which is in eastern Jerusalem. Her apartment was reportedly flooded and a large object due to the flooding hit her head. MADA, Israel's medical services, have treated her, and she was taken to the hospital but unfortunately pronounced dead. Now, this follows a similar trend that we saw last storm when we had Storm Byron, where an 82-year-old man in Netanya also died of hypothermia. And there is this recurring, something happening in this country that people have been pointing out and basically pointing on authorities that they seem a little bit unprepared. And we're seeing this in the streets, in the roads today. One of Israel's major highways, Route 4, was completely blocked due to flooding. So hundreds, if not thousands of Israelis ended up going in extremely late to work today, including our very own ILTV staffer, who was very late today to work because Road 4 was completely blocked. The weather is treacherous around the country and the roads have been flooded. And that raises the question of whether Israel has the proper infrastructure to house these sorts of storms, which, as you can see behind me, are not very stormy at all. There's not that much rain, but even a little bit of rain causes the country to collapse into a little bit more chaos than we may have liked. But that is our reporting for now. On the ground, a little bit less rain, but a lot of wind, and hopefully it's a little bit calmer in the studio. Back to you, Kalev.
And if you don't have to go out this evening, if you're one of the local viewers here in Israel of ILTV, I suggest you stay at home. Anyway, that ends this broadcast. You continue to watch our updates. I'm Kalev Ben David, and thank you for joining us here on ILTV News.
Step into the story of Israel's heartland with Blessed by Israel, where every purchase connects you to the land, the people, and the promise. Taste the sweetness of the promised land in their delicious honeys, or wear the story of the land close to your heart with the stunning Special Places of the Land necklace. Behind each product is a family, pioneers living in Judea and Samaria, crafting beauty and goodness from the soil of the Bible. When you buy their creations, you're not only receiving something extraordinary, you're investing in Israel's future, helping small businesses thrive and communities grow strong. Join a movement that celebrates faith, resilience, and hope. Visit blessedbyisrael.com and use ILTV's special code BLESSISRAEL, that's BLESSISRAEL, at checkout for 10% off on your first order. Be part of strengthening Israel, one purchase at a time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Good Week Israel, the show where we recap for you some of the positive highlights that have been coming out of Israel from this week. I'm your host, Ivo Klein, and coming up on today's show, the heroes of the Bondi Beach terror attack are honored in a heartwarming ceremony. MedX makes its way to Canada for the very first time. And exciting news for travelers in and out of Israel. In a truly heartwarming tribute to the heroes of the Bondi Beach terror attack on the Jewish community, heroes Ahmed Al-Ahmed and Chayat Adon were honored at the England v Australia cricket game. Have a look. At the Australia versus England cricket game last night, a heartwarming ceremony unfolded. The crowd erupted in cheers for the heroes of the Bondi Beach attack. Thousands of spectators, along with the Australian and English cricket teams, stood in applause for Ahmed Al-Ahmed, the Muslim man who confronted and fatally shot the terrorist Sajid Akram, and 14-year-old Chayat Adon, a Jewish teen who protected two young children during the attack. Al-Ahmed entered the stadium with his hand heavily bandaged, while Dadon arrived on crutches, visible reminders of the serious injuries they both endured. The crowd gave them a long standing ovation as the names of the 15 victims were displayed on giant screens with the words "Forever in our hearts." The announcer also declared that this attack was an attack on the Jewish community. Leading the procession were emergency service personnel, including paramedics, doctors, and police officers who responded to the scene, some while off duty, all of whom were respected by the crowd. Members of the Jewish community joined in, receiving a strong show of solidarity and respect. The stadium announcer then thanked the heroes in the community, praising their courage, service, and compassion in the face of tragedy. Ahmed Al-Ahmed and Chayat Adon stood humble and moved, a reminder of the bravery that saved lives on that fateful Hanukkah night. And check out Jewish National Fund USA's Caravan for Democracy, an insanely cool program bringing youth to Israel to experience the Holy Land firsthand in a life-changing experience that they will likely never forget. Let's see.
Nearly 30 American college student leaders from diverse faith backgrounds are ringing in the new year in Israel while participating in Jewish National Fund USA's Caravan for Democracy. The 7-day fully subsidized program equips attendees with the confidence to return to their college campuses and advocate for informed, constructive dialogue about Israel and the Middle East with their peers. Joining us today are two Caravan for Democracy students to share their experiences, Andrew Norton and Polly Johnston. Thank you so much for being here. Andrew, let's start with you. Why did you, as a non-Jewish student leader, want to come to Israel at this particular time?
Reasons. First one is this is the Holy Land. I want to see as a devout Christian where my faith comes from, right? I want to see the Bible come alive. I want to see the steps and the places and the things that make my faith so true, much more than believing. And this is the place to do that. And so that was the first reason. And secondly, it is, of course, to understand truly the Jewish side of this war, to understand the Israeli side of this war, to understand kind of just the reality of what's happening over here. I find myself in conversation with students from all different races and places. And I often see that they have opinions and they have arguments and they want to talk and debate. And I kind of hit an information block. And that information block comes when you haven't physically seen, you haven't physically viewed the place that you're thinking about, the place that you're talking about, the place that you're trying to strive and defend. And so that was one of the reasons, in addition to my faith, that I wanted to come out and truly see Israel.
And you, Polly?
Very much the same situation, but also I think there's no better time to come to Israel. We are just getting out of the post-war issues and also awaiting the last hostage to come home. And I think that's a really important thing because now we can see the life and the joy and the resilience of the Israeli people and how connected everyone is. But also back home, I have a lot of Jewish friends and family friends. So this is very personal as well, especially knowing that some friends are here in Israel right now.
Polly, what has been the most surprising part of your experience?
I think one of the most surprising parts is how joyful and kind everyone is. I think we back home in the United States are given this one perception that Israel is very similar. Everyone's the same. Everyone comes from the same background, and it's very oppressive and cruel. And that's just not the case at all. Everyone has their own opinions, and everyone comes from a different background, and they have different reasons for why they believe in what they believe. And they're not afraid to tell you, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Andrew, how will Caravan for Democracy impact you as a leader and an ally when you return to campus?
Perception. I think that I'm thankful to Jewish National Fund, first off, for this opportunity. And in this opportunity, one of the things they talked about was you're going to physically see this perspective that's going to be able to handle and guide your conversation back home. And so that's truly what it's done. Out here, Caravan for Democracy has quite literally caravan us across Israel to see just all the different places, the points for more than just the Jewish religion, all of them, and including our own. And so it's one of those things where you can truly now see, understand, have lived it, have experienced it to a degree that helps carry and guide this conversation towards a reality that we seek, right? A reality that offers peace, that offers safety, that offers respect for Jewish students, Jewish people, the religion as a whole, as well as the entire country of Israel.
Polly, what's one thing about Israel that you want to make sure your peers know?
Honestly, I want to make sure that they know everyone is connected and everyone is affected by what happens to the state of Israel and to the people of Israel. I don't think people back home understand quite how fully connected everyone is and how well people can get along despite their differences.
And you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that what we really want to bring home is kind of also the opportunity for people to kind of strive and engage in conversation more, engage in conversation that directs people towards the reality truth, right? I talked about the perspective and things like that I love. And so that's something that I learned here is really just the perspective that says, man, this is a welcoming group of people. This is the home of three religions. This is a land that offers and wants and seeks peace with everything. And so that's the one thing I want to be able to share, bring to people, and kind of pass forward.
Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As the largest provider of Israel engagement programs in the U.S., Jewish National Fund USA inspires a lifelong Zionist identity through youth, travel, and cultural experiences, helping individuals stay connected to the land and people of Israel for life. The organization also offers high school and college students of all backgrounds the opportunity to experience Israel in diverse ways that extend far beyond the classroom. To learn more, visit jnf.org.
Last week, hundreds of Jews from across Israel and North America came together to walk, roll, and just enjoy the spirit in Adi Negev's 4th annual race for inclusion, a powerful celebration of ability, healing, and hope. Check it out.
Wow, what a fun day today here at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran. We just completed 2.5 kilometers of the Race for Inclusion, a race that brings together people from all different abilities to celebrate Jewish unity and strength. More than 400 high school, gap year, and college students from North America gathered at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran last week to take part in the 4th annual Race for Inclusion, a 2.5-kilometer fun run through the 40-acre rehabilitation village. Participants came through programs including Jewish National Fund USA's Alternative Winter Break and the Alexander Muss High School in Israel. They were joined by rehabilitating IDF soldiers, members of Adi's wheelchair basketball team, staff, volunteers, and residents crossing the finish line side by side. At the start of the race, Adi's Director of Advancement, Ellie Klein, reminded participants that this run carries a deeper meaning.
There are so many people of your age, college campuses across America, communities around the world who are running, do evil things, to promote hatred, promote division. But you decided to be here today at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran to promote love and inclusion.
For Klein, the symbolism of running here is impossible to separate from the events of October 7th, 2023, when terrorists passed just outside the village on their way to Ofakim.
They want to advance hope, they want to advance healing, and they want to allow us to focus, to highlight on our humanity.
Adi Negev serves people of every background and ability, from residents with severe disabilities to war-wounded soldiers and civilians receiving treatment at the Kaylee Rehabilitation Medical Center, the first and only fully dedicated rehabilitation hospital in southern Israel.
We have so many different types of people who are coming here, all levels of ability. We have Jews, Israeli Arabs, Bedouins, Druze. The bottom line is that when they come here, they just focus on their humanity. All the stuff that we love to argue about, our politics, our religion, our background, we leave it at the door.
For the young participants, the experience was personal and eye-opening.
There were so many supportive, happy people there when you ran past the finish line.
I really believe in helping out this community of special needs and people with all different disabilities, so I want to be here and show my support for them.
As music played and a dance party broke out at the finish line, the message was clear: everyone belongs.
I think being able to do something that so many people with disabilities normally wouldn't be able to do, like running, is so incredible because, we're making it so that everyone can do it.
And for many, that joy said everything.
How was it? Wow, that was wonderful, so great! We're here to do the breaks like this. Oh, we do the walks in the road. That was so fun.
And for our ILTV viewers who may remember MedX, the event held by Nefesh B'Nefesh, which gives medical professionals the tools and advice to move to Israel. Well, MedX is back for another installment, not in Australia or in Europe this time, but in cold Toronto, Canada. Have a look. MedX has officially made its way to Canada. Following the MedX events in Australia, Argentina, the US, England, and France, these events, which are part of IMAP, the International Medical Aliyah Program, is continuing and expanding its efforts to bring physicians and medical professionals to their new home in Israel.
We are very, very excited. The International Medical Aliyah Program is spreading across the globe, and we have finally made it to Canada. And it's just incredible to see the crowds of individuals who are coming out, expressing their interest in making Aliyah, and to see just the number of medical professionals. We have almost close to 100 medical professionals who are interested, expressing their interest of moving to Israel and moving their careers and their professionalism and their ideology and wanting to rebuild and strengthen the medical infrastructure in Israel.
So how does MedX address two urgent needs all at once? Israel's healthcare system is facing a critical shortage of medical professionals, while many Olim with medical backgrounds need guidance and support to take the courageous step of making Aliyah. MedX Canada bridges that gap, providing real-time, efficient assistance to medical professionals throughout the Aliyah process. These events have already helped hundreds make the move.
And as we start to ask ourselves, what does the next chapter of our life look like now that our kids have gone off to university? The idea of moving to Israel and having a life in Israel is something that appeals to us. And naturally, we'd want to do that as professionals in Israel. And so we're trying to contemplate what does it look like to move our practice to a new country. So hopefully today's conference is going to teach us about that and demystify some of the aspects of having a life in Israel as a professional.
For Elon and Robin, the journey ahead comes with answers and essential support when it matters most.
MedX has been incredible. I went to their event in New York and they processed all my documents. And then actually last week I flew to Israel and took my licensing exam for physiotherapy. So God willing, by the time I arrive in Israel, I'll actually have my license ready to go, can hit the ground running, can start working. So they've been incredible, super helpful. Any glitches that came up, they right away had an easy access to the right people and they dealt with it.
Some attendees aren't just focused on starting their careers in Israel, they're also eager to come home and finally be a part of the Israeli society.
The most important thing in life is community, and being surrounded by like-minded people, people who see the world the same way as you do and make you feel like a part of something greater. And my people are in Israel.
Working and practicing and helping the Jewish people, and certainly from a health perspective, giving them our best that we could possibly do, I would love to do that.
I feel the pull of the need for living in Israel and being part of the society. I'm past the age when I can do army service, but I think there's other service you can do to help Israel rebuild itself.
As interest in Aliyah grows, the IMAP program is as crucial as ever. With the focus on the medical world, MedX offers a brand new opportunity of integration and comprehensive support. And some good news for travelers. I spoke with our very own anchor, Emily Schrader, to break down all of the news regarding flights and travel in and out of Israel. Have a look.
Now, it's been quite some time since Israelis have seen reasonable airfares and flight options, but all that is set to change for the year 2026. Let's go now to ILTV's Devo Klein to break this down. So, Devo, you have some good news for Israeli travelers, I hear.
Yes, Emily, that is right. We have a few additions for this upcoming year, but probably the biggest news of them all for Israelis right now is that Arkia Airlines have launched the first ever direct flight from Tel Aviv to Hanoi, Vietnam. This is major news for Israelis who we know absolutely love Southeast Asia, and now they actually don't need to succumb to the El Al monopoly. They actually have a reasonably priced direct flight as another option. But that's actually not all. See, budget airline Wizz Air are expanding their flight to Tel Aviv with brand new locations now on the map, like the Balkans, the UAE, Morocco, and others. Now, what does all this news mean? Well, more options means increased competition, which also leads to lower airfares, which is so crucial in Israel right now, particularly to Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. But what about the transatlantic lines? Well, Delta Airlines is restoring direct flights from Atlanta and Boston, with the Boston route returning only in October 2026, while ITA Airways is resuming 2 daily flights from Rome to Tel Aviv, reestablishing a key European gateway. Now, Emily, you got to take this news with a grain of salt because some airlines are still suspended as of this very moment. Prices for flights are still astronomically high, and Israeli tourism is still very much down. So while we have amazing news on the horizon, we will have to wait patiently to receive all these new routes and options. But for now, Emily, it's looking pretty good for Israelis. Back to you. And the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is starting off 2026 with a bang. Israel's economy is known for one thing, bouncing back stronger than ever after global crises like Corona and local crises like, say, a seventh front war for 2 years. This story is incredible. Have a look.
The new year begins with good economic news, citing a falling inflation, a stronger shekel, and continued economic growth. The Bank of Israel has cut the interest rate to 4%. The central bank says the consumer price index fell by 0.5% in November, bringing annual inflation down to 2.4%, with expectations that inflation will stabilize near the midpoint of the target range after a temporary bump in December. Since the last rate decision, the shekel has strengthened more than 3% against the dollar. Israel's risk premium has returned close to pre-war levels, and local stock markets have outperformed global peers. The bank says economic activity continues to expand with strong consumer spending, high levels of raising capital in high tech, and elevated construction activity. The labor market remains tight, but it is showing signs of easing, with moderating wage pressures and fewer workers absent due to reserve duty. Governor Amir Yaron said the decision reflects greater economic stability, while stressing that the future rate moves will depend on inflation, growth, geopolitical developments, and fiscal conditions.
And that's not all. Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is actually now moving to an international schedule after decades of sticking to a strongly Israeli schedule based around the Sabbath, or as we call it here in Israel, the Shabbat. Have a look.
And the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange today shifts to a global work week, moving from a Sunday to Thursday schedule to a Monday through Friday trading. December 28 marked the final Sunday of trading, with the new schedule set to take effect opening tomorrow morning. The move, initiated by the stock exchange and approved by the finance ministry, is aimed at aligning Israel's capital markets with major exchanges worldwide and attracting additional foreign investment. For the past 50 years, Israel has traded on Sundays to match the local work week. Under the new system, Friday trading will end at 2 p.m. in respect for the Jewish Sabbath. The Israel Securities Authority says the old schedule created a significant gap with global markets, making it harder for foreign investors to operate in real time and reducing Israel's appeal as a liquid global financial hub. Regulators say the change is part of a broader strategy to modernize the market, including allowing reporting in English and encouraging global listings.
And just before we wrap up, a huge shout out once again to Deni Avdia, who is still breaking records and reaching new achievements for Israelis in the world of basketball. Let's see.
A proud moment for Israeli basketball, as Deni Avdia has been named the NBA's Western Conference Player of the Week. The Israeli forward is enjoying a breakout season with the Portland Trail Blazers, and this latest honor confirms his rise among the league's elite. Over the past week, Avdia put up staggering numbers, a 34-point performance followed by a triple-double in back-to-back games. He averaged nearly 27 points, more than 8 rebounds, and almost 10 assists per game. Avdia is among the top vote-getters ahead of the NBA All-Star Game, an unprecedented achievement for an Israeli player. The All-Star selections will be announced next week, and Deni is expected to be on the team. From Tel Aviv to Portland, Deni Avdia is making basketball history and putting an Israeli player at the front of the NBA stage.
Well, that is all for today's Good Week Israel. I hope we've helped to deliver some positive news that you get to now take with you into this week ahead. As always, I am Devo Klein. Take care, and thank you so much for watching.
And moving on, a delegation of American healthcare leaders traveled to Israel to witness something extraordinary, a healing nation. Organized by Israel Bonds, the mission took doctors inside Israel's hospitals, trauma units, and medical schools, revealing how care, innovation, and hope continue despite the challenges. Here's their story.
Last month, a group of healthcare leaders traveled to Israel on a delegation organized by Israel Bonds. They came to see firsthand Israel's medical institutions in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks, and to see how the country, even through war, continued to care for its citizens and even advance world-class medical practices.
This is my second delegation that I've led for Israel Bonds since October 7th. There was more hope than devastation this time.
The delegation visited some of the nation's most prominent medical centers, including Sheba and Soroka hospitals. There, delegates saw the country's trauma units in action, treating soldiers and civilians under extraordinary conditions. Their trip also showed the social side of Israel's story. Attendees volunteered at Leket Israel and visited Beit HaLochem, where injured veterans train, recover, and rebuild their lives.
Seeing the strength, seeing the bravery, seeing the belief in the Jewish people, the belief in the state of Israel from their young people, and their willingness to pay the ultimate sacrifice, their willingness to do what they have to do to keep their parents alive, to keep this country alive, has been very meaningful.
The delegates visited Israel's top medical schools to see how the next generation of physicians and researchers are being trained. Despite recent challenges, students and faculty alike remain optimistic and focused on shaping the future of global healthcare. It's a future that Israel Bonds wants to be a part of. Buying Israel Bonds is a way to both invest and support Israel.
Israel Bonds has been there for Israel. It's been the way for the Americans to be there for Israel since almost the beginning of the State of Israel.
By virtue of our purchase of Israel Bonds, we are showing that we are investing in Israel's growth as they take on their role as one of the greatest innovators in the world.
After some intense days on the ground, attendees returned home inspired. They left with a stronger connection to Israel and a deeper understanding of how Israel Bonds supports the country.
And moving on, ILTV is partnering with Regavim to spotlight one of the most critical issues facing Israel today, the protection of our national land and resources. Regavim works on the ground, in the courts, and in the Knesset to expose illegal land seizures, defend the rule of law, and safeguard Israel's heartland, especially in Judea and Samaria. So if you want real data and a deeper understanding of what's happening beyond the headlines, you can scan the QR code on your screen or visit regavim.org and sign up for their newsletter. Learn how you can play a role in safeguarding the land of Israel.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is signaling a potentially dramatic shift in U.S.-Israel relations, saying Israel is preparing to gradually wean itself off American military aid. More on this from ILTV and Mayan Hoffman.
Well, thank you, Sivan. I'm standing here right near the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. Prime Minister Netanyahu's words are already reverberating in Washington. Netanyahu said that Israel will not seek to renew the 10-year military assistance package from the United States, a package that is set to expire in 2028. He cited Israel's economic stability and strength and military maturity as the reasons. In an interview with The Economist, Netanyahu said Israel could ultimately give up the billions of dollars it receives each year from Washington to purchase American weapon systems. The current memorandum of understanding guarantees $3.8 billion annually, including $3.3 billion in direct military aid and roughly $500 million for joint missile defense programs.
I want to taper off the military aid within the next 10 years. In my visit with President Trump, I said, we very deeply appreciate the military aid that America has given us over the years, but here too we've come of age. That's not saying that I don't want to fight for the allegiance and support of the American people. I do.
You want to taper it off to zero within 10 years?
Yes.
That would be a very dramatic shift.
Well, it's in the works.
The comments drew swift reaction in Washington. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Israel's closest allies on Capitol Hill, welcomed Netanyahu's remarks, but suggested the timeline could move even faster. Graham said that if Israel no longer needs the aid, the U.S. should consider ending it sooner and redirecting the funds back into the American military, as President Donald Trump pushes for a major Pentagon budget increase. Graham stressed that U.S. military aid to Israel has been a strong investment in American national security, while acknowledging Israel's growing self-sufficiency. Netanyahu's comments come amid rising bipartisan scrutiny of U.S. aid to Israel, underscoring a moment of strategic recalibration with long-term implications for both allies.
Now, it's been quite some time since Israelis have seen reasonable airfares and flight options, but all that is set to change for the year 2026. Let's go now to ILTV's Devo Klein to break this down. So, Devo, you have some good news for Israeli travelers, I hear.
Yes, Emily, that is right. We have a few additions for this upcoming year, but probably the biggest news of them all for Israelis right now is that Arkia Airlines have launched the first ever direct flight from Tel Aviv to Hanoi, Vietnam. This is major news for Israelis who we know absolutely love Southeast Asia, and now they actually don't need to succumb to the El Al monopoly. They actually have a reasonably priced direct flight as another option. But that's actually not all. See, budget airline Wizz Air are expanding their flight to Tel Aviv with brand new locations now on the map, like the Balkans, the UAE, Morocco, and others. Now, what does all this news mean? Well, more options means increased competition, which also leads to lower airfares, which is so crucial in Israel right now, particularly to Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. But what about the transatlantic lines? Well, Delta Airlines is restoring direct flights from Atlanta and Boston, with the Boston route returning only in October 2026, while ITA Airways is resuming 2 daily flights from Rome to Tel Aviv, reestablishing a key European gateway. Now, Emily, you gotta take this news with a grain of salt because some airlines are still suspended as of this very moment. Prices for flights are still astronomically high, and Israeli tourism is still very much down. So while we have amazing news on the horizon, we will have to wait patiently to receive all these new routes and options. But for now, Emily, it's looking pretty good for Israelis. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Devo, for that. We'll continue to keep you updated on the flights coming in and out of Israel.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Mindy Naftali, coming to you live from Israel with the top stories in the region. And starting off, Iran is descending deeper into crisis as the regime continues a brutal crackdown on mass protests calling for regime change. Activists warn the death toll is rising by the hour, with hundreds killed, more than 10,000 detained, and no sign that the Islamic Republic is backing down. The protesters are now on their 16th day, with at least 500 protesters killed since December 28th, although many warn the true number is likely much higher. Regime security forces have been deployed, firing live ammunition, conducting mass arrests, and using violence to clear the streets. Iran's leaders are shifting the blame, accusing Israel and the United States of inciting the unrest. Iran's Speaker of Parliament issued a threat, saying Israel and U.S. military bases would be legitimate targets if Iran is attacked. As Iran threatens, Washington is calculating its next move. President Donald Trump is expected to be briefed this week on possible responses, including military strikes, cyber operations, additional sanctions, and stepped-up support for anti-regime messaging. For now, Trump issued another warning.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
And as mass protests rock Iran and the regime faces major internal pressure, Israel is not only watching the unrest, but it is also upping its readiness for the possibility of Iranian retaliation. Israeli officials confirm they are in contact with American counterparts in Washington about possible U.S. responses to the crackdown. Recent security consultations in Israel involved top military and government leaders, discussing possible scenarios with U.S. officials. Israeli leaders say any direct attack or threat from Iran will not be taken lightly. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel is monitoring events in Iran with great attention.
ישראל עוקבת בדריכות על הנעשה באיראן. הפגנות למען החירות התפשטו ברחבי המדינה. העם בישראל, העולם כולו, משתאה מול הגבורה האדירה של אזרחי איראן. ישראל תומכת במאבקם לחופש ומגנה בתקיפות את מעשי הטבח ההמוני באזרחים חפים מפשע. כולנו תקווה שהאומה הפרסית תשתחרר.
The Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 20%. Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Khaled Ben David. Here is your roundup of the latest developments coming out of Israel and elsewhere. Well, we open with Iran, where the death toll and anti-government protest continues to grow. The White House says that after several warnings were ignored, diplomacy remains an option, but warns Tehran not to underestimate President Trump's readiness to use military force. The protests have now entered their third week, with new reports out of Iran claiming that at least 2,000 people have been killed and over 10,000 arrested. Demonstrations, strikes, and civil disobedience continue across the country, now despite the regime's crackdown signaling deep and wide unrest. Now, inside the U.S. administration, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Vice President J.D. Vance is leading a push to give diplomatic talks with Iran a chance before any military strike. However, U.S. officials say President Trump has not made a final decision and currently leans towards military action, with some scenarios including striking first and talking later. White House spokesperson Carolyn Leavitt told Fox News that while President Trump prioritizes diplomacy, he is unafraid to use lethal force if necessary. Leavitt said Iran is sending quite different signals privately than it is publicly, indicating the regime fully understands Trump's resolve. She highlighted the destruction of Iran's nuclear program as evidence of U.S. military might, warning that Tehran should not miscalculate. Reports from Washington say Trump is examining final plans and proposals on what can be done to help the Iranians, with the central question being how and when. Now, the administration is said to be considering a range of strong responses, including airstrikes, while still leaving diplomacy on the table.
Well, I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table, and airstrikes would be one of the many, many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately. And I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. However, with that said, the president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary, and nobody knows that better than Iran.
Trump did announce last night on his Trump social media that effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. Well, the Chinese embassy to the U.S. tweeted in response that China, Iran's largest trade partner, will firmly oppose any illicitly unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction, and will take all necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate interests and rights. Meanwhile, Iran is escalating its rhetoric against the U.S. and Israel. Iranian Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi claiming that Iran has obtained extensive documents and evidence linking the recent unrest across the country to the U.S. and Israel, noting that Mossad agents attempted to direct such terrorist acts. The foreign minister said at a press conference that beginning on June 8th, terrorists and armed groups carrying weapons entered protest sites and opened fire on police and civilians with the aim of steering demonstrations towards violence and chaos. He also claimed that Iran does not seek war, but is fully prepared, adding that the regime is ready for serious negotiations with the U.S., but the talks must be based on fairness, equality, and mutual respect rather than unilateral pressure and directives from Washington. Well, the IDF spokesperson, Brigadier General Effie Defrin, tweeted this comment overnight. In recent days, many rumors have spread against the backdrop of the situation in Iran. As was clarified, the IDF is prepared for defense and alert for surprise scenarios if required. The protests in Iran are an internal matter. That ends this update on ILTV. Of course, you can catch us at the top of every hour with more of the latest news, or you could check out our app. And of course, you could just download that QR code on your screen in order to do that. I'm Khaled Ben David. Thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and coming up in today's newscast. Protests in Iran continue as the death toll rises. Will the United States and Israel intervene? Israel boosts its readiness for the possibility of a preemptive Iranian strike. And as Hezbollah breaches the ceasefire, the IDF responds with waves of strikes against the terror group. Is another war on the horizon? Iran is descending deeper into crisis as the regime continues a brutal crackdown on mass protests calling for its removal. Activists warn the death toll is rising by the hour, with hundreds killed, more than 10,000 detained, and no sign the Islamic Republic is backing down. As the streets of Iran burn, the United States and Israel are holding high-level security talks, and President Donald Trump is weighing possible responses. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz has the latest.
The protests in Iran are now in their 16th day. U.S.-based human rights groups say more than 10,600 people have been detained across the country, with at least 500 protesters killed since December 28th. They warn the true number is likely much higher, as Iran has cut internet access and shut down communications to hide the scale of the crackdown. Security forces, including the Revolutionary Guard and militiamen, have been deployed in force, firing live ammunition, conducting mass arrests, and using violence to clear streets. Iran's leaders are trying to shift blame, accusing Israel and the United States of inciting the unrest. President Mossad Pezeshkian claimed foreign powers were sowing chaos, warning that demonstrators would not be allowed to disrupt society. Iran's parliament speaker issued an explicit threat, saying Israel and U.S. military bases would be legitimate targets if Iran is attacked. Lawmakers chanted "Death to America" on the floor of the parliament. As Iran threatens, Washington is calculating its next move. President Trump continues his threats against the regime and was asked about his view of the protesters.
I don't think they're trying to play. I think they just want peace. They want to have freedom. The protesters are after freedom. Iran has not allowed freedom for a long time. And the protesters, I don't think they're trying to appease me. They're trying to get somebody to help them. They're under siege. And now it looks like they're being shot, which is a very bad thing.
Trump is expected to be briefed this week on possible responses, including military strikes, cyber operations, additional sanctions, and stepped-up support for anti-regime messaging.
And as the mass protests rock Iran and the regime faces intense internal pressure, Israel is not only watching the unrest, it's boosting its readiness for the possibility of Iranian retaliation or a wider regional escalation. ILTV's India Naftali has the latest.
Yes, Lidar, Israel is boosting alert levels and handling the dual threat posed by unrest in Iran and potential retaliatory actions. Iran's parliament issued a strong warning, declaring that if any foreign military action is taken against Iran, Israel and U.S. bases in the region would be legitimate targets. Israeli officials are in contact with their American counterparts in Washington about possible U.S. responses to the crackdown. Recent security consultations in Israel involved top military and government leaders who spoke with American counterparts about possible scenarios. Israeli officials have made it clear that any direct attack or threat from Iran will not be taken lightly. The IDF, according to leaders, is maintaining high defensive readiness and strengthening capabilities to respond to any missile or attack threat. Authoritative preparations like enhanced air defense postures, continuous situation assessments, and coordination with U.S. forces are central to Israel's strategy. Netanyahu spoke of monitoring events in Iran with great attention, expressing hopes for freedom for Iranians, but also stressing that Israel will do what is required to protect its security. Experts say Israel and the U.S. are watching carefully for any signal that Tehran might shift from internal repression to external aggression, a move that could trigger a far larger conflict across the nation. Israeli government ministers have been instructed not to speak publicly about any possible external intervention in Iran, according to a report by Khan public broadcaster. Prime Minister Netanyahu is the exception.
ישראל עוקבת בדריכות על הנעשה באיראן. הפגנות למען החירות התפשטו ברחבי המדינה. העם בישראל, העולם כולו, משתאה מול הגבורה האדירה של אזרחי איראן. ישראל תומכת במאבקם לחופש ומגנה בתקיפות את מעשי הטבח ההמוני באזרחים חפים מפשע. כולנו תקווה שהאומה הפרסית תשתחרר מקרוב מעול העריצות, וכשיום זה יגיע, ישראל ואיראן יחזרו להיות שותפות נאמנות בבניית עתיד של שגשוג ושלום לשני העמים.
Officials in Jerusalem stress that there are no indications that Israel is considering direct involvement in Iran's internal unrest.
And joining us now with more on the protests in Iran and a possible U.S. and Israeli intervention is Nati Tubian, an expert on Iran. Nati, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we're hearing very troubling reports, seeing shocking video of hundreds, if not thousands, of bodies lining the streets of Iran as the regime is opening live fire on the protesters and employing other measures as well against the Iranian people, taking out the internet. What is the situation in Iran right now, and are the protests showing any signs of dying down?
Just to put things in the correct order, the figure that you mentioned is probably much higher. I talked to an Iranian journalist, and he says that he fears that the number has already exceeds more than 10,000 killed by the regime.
Wow.
And I tend to believe him because in the riot, in the unrest, I think 7 years ago, due to the the price of the petrol, the gas that was tripled overnight, respectable news agencies reported that some 200, 300, or 500 Iranians were killed. But now, according to the recent data that we have received, the figure is around 5,000 kills 7 years ago. So probably the figures are much higher. This journalist with whom I'm in constant contact, he resides in Europe. Nothing to be worried about him, but he says that around 150 young Iranians, including married couples who have been married for, less than 2 months, have left wills with their pictures and testimonies and full details, and said they know that they are going to participate in the protests. They have no other choice, and they will probably not come back safe and sound. The married couple says that they didn't have the chance to go to the honeymoon, and this is going to be probably their honeymoon for Iran.
So really tragic stories that we're hearing from the Iranian people, and of course the figures that we have are not official, and estimates, as you said, the numbers are clearly much higher. Now the Islamic regime, they're not backing down. They're still opening live fire despite threats from the United States. Are the Ayatollahs still firmly in control of the country right now, or is there a real threat that they could fall in the coming days, weeks, or possibly months?
The picture is not clear, but seeing the response, I can deduce that this is clearly because of lack of sufficient soldiers for the regime to crack down the demonstrations. Iran has already lost its major proxy, Hezbollah. We know that in the recent protests, Nasrallah had sent thousands of Hezbollah members to crack down and to suppress the uprisings. They don't have Hezbollah. The popular mobilization of Iraq are also unable, although we have reports that some hundreds of these people who are Iranian proxies have been supporting in cracking down the protests in southern parts of Iran. But it is clear that the Iranian regime is in distress.
And add to that, you know, U.S. President Trump has threatened to intervene. We heard his comments earlier. Reports indicate it's not a question of when, it's a question of, or sorry, not a question of if, a question of when. So what would the U.S. need to do to ensure that these protests do succeed? And, you know, would essentially taking out the Ayatollah himself, would that bring down the regime?
Well, I have no clear indication what the U.S. is going to do regarding, assisting the Iranian people. As you have already mentioned, there are many possibilities. Direct strike on Basij, the military branch of the IRGC, even cyber attacks or other things. I don't know. But
no, I guess the question is what would best help the Iranian people? So how could the U.S. intervene to best help the Iranian people?
Weaken the regime, weaken the suppressing ability of the regime. I don't know how exactly are they going to do it, and if that is not enough, I only remember what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a few days ago. He encouraged the people to take to streets, and he said that Israel is behind them. How exactly is Israel behind Iranian protesters in these days? I don't know. So it is the picture is mostly vague and uncertain.
Certainly a vague picture, tragic what's going on in Iran, but Israel and the United States, of course, behind the Iranian people. Nati Tubian, thank you so much for joining us today and for providing your unique insights.
Thank you. All the best.
And moving on, ILTV is partnering with Regavim to spotlight one of the most critical issues facing Israel today, the protection of our national land and resources. Regavim works on the ground, in the courts, and in the Knesset to expose illegal land seizures, defend the rule of law, and safeguard Israel's heartland, especially in Judea and Samaria. So if you want real data and a deeper understanding of what's happening beyond the headlines, you can scan the QR code on your screen or visit regavim.org and sign up for their newsletter. Learn how you can play a role in safeguarding the land of Israel. And in other news, Israel is watching Gaza closely as Hamas claims it will hand over civil control to a new U.S.-backed board of peace. At the same time, according to officials, Israel is preparing a new offensive in Gaza, targeting Gaza City as soon as March. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
Hamas claims it's ready to transfer authority to a temporary Palestinian government under the U.S. proposed Board of Peace, designed to oversee Gaza after the war. According to the Hamas officials, all its governing agencies have been directed to prepare for the handover. But Israeli officials and security sources express skepticism, pointing out that Hamas has historically failed to comply with agreements. Prime Minister Netanyahu made clear that any political agreement must include the full disarmament of Hamas and complete demilitarization of the Strip, in line with the president's 20-point post-war plan. Jerusalem says it will accept nothing less than complete control of the Strip away from Hamas. Former UN envoy Nikolai Mladenov is expected to head the Board of Peace. Last week, Netanyahu met with Mladenov to discuss the security guarantees, and Mladenov also met with Palestinian Authority official Hussein al-Sheikh to work on practical mechanisms. News reports say that the composition of the Board of Peace could be announced as early as this week, but many questions still remain. Meanwhile, if the Gaza peace plan breaks down, the IDF is preparing a new offensive in Gaza, targeting Gaza City as soon as March, according to officials. The IDF has drawn up plans to push the yellow ceasefire line west, expanding Israeli control of the Strip. But sources also say the operation will require the green light from U.S. President Donald Trump, as Washington continues efforts to advance the fragile ceasefire toward a second phase that includes Hamas disarmament. Prime Minister Netanyahu has agreed to cooperate with U.S. efforts, but remains skeptical they will succeed, and has directed the IDF to prepare for this contingency.
And the IDF is also signaling that the northern front could be heading toward a new escalation. The army confirmed that it carried out waves of strikes on Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure in southern Lebanon, targeting weapons storage shafts at several military sites. According to the IDF, recent activity by Hezbollah was identified at these locations, activity that the army says clearly violates the ceasefire understandings between Israel and Lebanon. The strikes come despite claims by the Lebanese armed forces that they have completed the first phase of a disarmament plan in the south. Israel says those steps are far from sufficient, accusing Hezbollah of continuing to rearm with Iranian support. The ceasefire that ended more than a year of fighting requires the full disarmament of Hezbollah, a condition Israel says has not been met. Israeli officials have made clear that if diplomacy fails, military options are on the table, and reports say the IDF has already created operational plans that are ready to go should the Northern Front once again slide into war. And Israel is also closely monitoring developments in the northern Syria as fighting between government forces and Kurdish groups forces civilians and fighters to flee Aleppo, raising concerns about regional stability and Iranian influence near Israel's borders. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
Crowds in the Kurdish autonomous area in Syria have been welcoming civilians and Kurdish-led SDF fighters evacuated from Aleppo following days of deadly clashes. Syrian state television reports that government forces have begun moving Kurdish fighters out of Aleppo after fierce urban fighting that killed dozens and displaced more than 140,000 people. Kurdish fighters who agreed to withdraw were transported by bus from a Kurdish-majority neighborhood to northeastern Syria, an area controlled by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. Reporters confirmed seeing multiple buses escorted by Syrian security forces leaving the area after days of intense fighting. The violence broke out after talks with Syria's new government over integrating the Kurds' de facto autonomous administration and military into the state stalled, exposing deep fault lines in post-Assad Syria. At least 21 civilians have been killed, with Aleppo's governor saying more than 150,000 people were displaced. Syria's defense ministry declared a ceasefire and ordered a halt to military operations in 3 Aleppo neighborhoods, giving armed groups 6 hours to withdraw. Fighters were allowed to keep light personal weapons and were promised safe escort to the northeast. Kurdish local councils have rejected what they call pressure to surrender, saying they do not trust Damascus to guarantee their security and vow to defend their communities. In Israel, security officials are watching the developments closely. Israel has long viewed Kurdish forces as a stabilizing buffer against Iranian influence in Syria and fears that a weakened Kurdish presence could benefit Tehran and its proxies. Israeli officials are also concerned that escalation between Damascus and the Kurds could draw in Turkey, further complicating the security landscape and increasing the risk of spillover toward the Golan Heights. In Jerusalem, the developments in Aleppo are a reminder that Syria remains volatile and that any shift in power could quickly affect Israel.
And U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing back against claims of anti-Semitism within his political base, saying there is no place for anti-Semites in the MAGA movement or the Republican Party. In an interview with the New York Times, Trump said, quote, "We don't need them, we don't like them," adding that he certainly condemns anti-Semitic views on the right. Trump pointed to his record on Israel, saying he recently received the Israel Prize, Israel's highest honor ever given to a non-Israeli, and argued that no U.S. president has been more supportive of the Jewish state. When asked about far-right figure and Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes, Trump said he does not know him, despite acknowledging a 2022 dinner where Fuentes attended as a guest of Kanye West. Trump also distanced himself from controversial statements by a senior appointee, saying he cannot know the views of everyone in his administration. The president stressed his personal ties to the Jewish community, noting that his daughter Ivanka is Jewish and that his grandchildren are being raised Jewish, saying he is, quote, "probably the least anti-Semitic person anywhere in the world." And Israel is continuing its push to deepen strategic ties in Asia. Foreign Minister Gideon Saar welcomed Japan's foreign minister to Jerusalem, a high-profile visit that signals a strengthening of relations between the two countries. ILTV's Devo Klein reports.
The visit of Japan's foreign minister, his first bilateral trip since taking office in October, is already being seen as a clear signal of the strong friendship and shared values between Israel and Japan.
Saar called the two nations ancient civilizations with common interests and democratic principles, and stressed that Israel and Japan must deepen strategic and security cooperation, particularly in a changing global landscape. Saar thanked Japan for its support since the October 7th massacre.
We thank Japan, which since October 7th has recognized Israel's right to defend itself, has called for the unconditional release of our hostages, and has imposed sanctions on Hamas leaders. We will work together to strengthen bilateral relations across all fields between our countries and nations.
Motegi, serving his second term as foreign minister, visited following a series of high-level exchanges, including Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting with a large Japanese delegation of lawmakers, underscoring Japan's growing role as a key diplomatic and security partner for Israel. Israeli officials say that this visit not only deepens strategic ties, but also sends a strong signal that Jerusalem is looking to broaden its alliances beyond the region, strengthening diplomatic, security, and economic cooperation with Asia.
First of all, let me once again express my deepest condolences to the victims of the terrorist attacks on October 7th. And earlier today, before coming here, I visited the music festival site memorial in the city of Rain, one of the attack sites, and with deep sorrow, I renewed my strong conviction that terrorism is absolutely unacceptable under any circumstances. And Japan has strongly condemned the brutal acts of terror committed by Hamas, and we maintain that Hamas must be disarmed in accordance with the comprehensive plan. To improve the situation surrounding Israel and Palestine, Japan has maintained good relations with both Israel and Palestine, and building upon such relationship of trust, with this visit, I aim to convey Japan's candid views on concrete steps to be taken to both sides, and also explain how Japan intends to extend its cooperation with you all.
And the Israel Defense Forces Elite Alpinist Unit has completed a rare and highly specialized training cycle on Mount Hermon, preparing for combat and defense in some of the harshest conditions in the region. The Reservist Special Forces Unit, which specializes in operations in snow, ice, and extreme cold, trained this year at the summit of Mount Hermon, an area that was in Syrian hands until the fall of the Assad regime in December 2024. During the exercises, troops practiced operating in steep, complex mountainous terrain using specialized equipment designed for extreme weather and heavy snow. The IDF says the training is critical for maintaining operational readiness in the northern arena, where weather can be as much of a challenge as any adversary. In recent days, the unit took part in a mission on Mount Hermon and in the Golan Heights aimed at protecting the area and enabling the safe reopening of Israel's only ski site to visitors. Mount Hermon is the only place in Israel with guaranteed winter snow. The ski resort, located on the southeastern slopes of the mountain, had been closed for more than a year during the war with Hezbollah after damage to ski lifts from the rocket fire. The site has since reopened with limited access, including a cable car and sledding areas with security provided by IDF forces on the ground. And meanwhile, Israel is bracing for a powerful winter storm set to hit tonight, bringing fierce winds, heavy rain, flooding risks, and the first widespread snow threat of the season. In the north, heavy snow is expected on Mount Hermon, with several centimeters of accumulation possible in the northern Golan Heights. The Israel Meteorological Service warns of strong winds with gusts topping 100 kilometers per hour, similar to the storm just days ago that caused widespread damage. And with that, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 10 degrees Celsius or 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see rain showers alongside steady temperatures with highs of 14 degrees Celsius or 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and keep up with us on social media. That's at ILTV_Israel on all platforms. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.
The Trump administration did something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. One thing we do know for sure, the only entity that is more terrified than Maduro right now is the Islamic regime in Iran. What makes things different this time? The regime's stability is at a historic low. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Record. In a time when rage bait and headlines travel faster than truth, this show exists to pause, question, and cut through the noise. We believe in having difficult conversations without losing our sanity and humanity. I'm Zina Rachamilova, and thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been quite a week, hasn't it? Since the last episode that we filmed, so much has happened across the globe. In just 1 week, we began with protests erupting all over Iran, the largest protest since the Women Life Freedom movement after the murder of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. And then, before the week was over, the Trump administration did something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. They struck Venezuela and captured the narco-dictator Nicolas Maduro and his wife. The U.S. brought both of them to New York City, and the two will be held in the Brooklyn Detention Center until further notice. We'll be unpacking all of this today on Off the Record. Let's get into it. We know that the people of Iran have been at the mercy of this brutal dictatorship since 1979. The Islamic Republic of Iran is an authoritarian regime that survives through repression, fear, and violence against its own people. It jails, tortures, and executes dissidents, crushes women's rights, censors the press, and violently suppresses protests. Iranians face poverty and isolation while the regime funnels money into terrorism and proxy wars across the Middle East. This regime has no democratic legitimacy, no accountability, and no tolerance for freedom. Now, these demonstrations began in Tehran, and they spread across the country in the backdrop of the economy. Iran's currency has plummeted and become completely worthless. Right now, one Iranian rial is worth $0.00024 US dollars. There's actually a video circulating on Iranian social media showing that it requires an entire table of banknotes equaling to hundreds of millions of rial just to buy one mobile phone. That's how bad the economic crisis is in Iran. What's meaningful about these protests is that the Bazari class, the class of merchants that were essential in the revolution in 1979, some of them joined these protests. During the revolution, the Bazaris were crucial in mobilizing grassroots support and providing funding, shelter, and organizational networks for demonstrations against the Shah. And now, we're seeing videos coming from the Grand Bazaar in Tehran showing that these stores are closed, and even stores that are open, which are probably regime loyalists, are forced to close because of these demonstrations. But what's really interesting is that despite media narratives framing these protests as a response to inflation or economic hardship, that is not what Iranians on the streets are demanding. If you listen to the slogans made in these demonstrations, you aren't hearing complaints about the economy or the cost of living. You are hearing Iranians chant against the Islamic Republic itself that has oppressed them for 47 years. You hear slogans like, "Until the mullahs are dead, we won't be free," or "Death to the dictator." They're also demanding that the regime stop supporting terror, namely Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is what they're chanting, and this is what should be the focus when we talk about these protests, not framing it as if it's economic grievances. No, they are fighting for their freedom. Some people may say, this isn't the first time Iranians have risked their lives on the streets, so what's really going to change now? Well, what's meaningful and unique about this round of protests is that they're happening in the backdrop of the Iranian war with Israel. Israel demonstrated how weak the Iranian regime actually was after the 12-day war in June, and Israel's decisive victory gave the people of Iran greater confidence that the regime isn't an impenetrable force. So, for the first time during these protests, the regime is clearly worried, so much so that Israel even thought it would launch an attack out of desperation to deflect on what's actually happening on their streets. So, what makes things different this time? The regime's stability is at a historic low. Now, for weeks before these protests, Israel was deeply concerned about Iran launching a strike after monitoring their missile drills. We all knew that the regime's nuclear threat posed an existential danger to Israel, especially since it was something that Netanyahu has warned us about for years. But now, after the war, Iran's ballistic missile program is seen as an equally grave existential threat. If Israel and the U.S. don't have enough interceptors to stop the missiles from landing at Israeli communities, the damage would equal to that of a nuclear strike. Does this mean that Israel may potentially go to war with Iran? It's hard to say. Dynamics in the Middle East can shift within minutes, and given what happened in Venezuela, which we'll cover shortly, the regime is on its knees. I think Trump has sent a very powerful message against everyone in the so-called axis of resistance this weekend. Israel, therefore, has even more incentive to stop Iran in its tracks and prevent an attack. Now, during the Mar-a-Lago summit, President Trump said he would support an Israeli attack against the regime's ballistic missile program. And this is a pretty big deal because we know that Iran, while pausing its efforts to create a nuclear program, has actually accelerated its efforts to rebuild its ballistic missile program in the last 6 months. It has purchased thousands of ballistic missiles from China and is trying to recover many of the military bases that deal with it. So when President Trump makes it clear that there's no daylight between the U.S. and Israel when it comes to handling this regime, it sends a powerful message to the supreme leader. What I want to bring the focus back to is the people of Iran. The people on the streets protesting now are some of the bravest people I think I've ever seen. Quite frankly, I think all of us who have grown up in Western democracies lack an appreciation for what Iranians are fighting for on the streets. We can't really appreciate what it means to safely participate in a protest without risking your life or your family's life. Under the Islamic regime, if your face is photographed or if authorities get wind of your involvement, you could face an unfair trial and even be sentenced to death. Your family, your kids can all be taken away from you in an instant. So for all of us sitting in democracies, wherever we are, we should be grateful, we should be inspired by Iranians, and we should all be speaking up for them. The fact that Israeli leaders sent a message of solidarity to the people of Iran at the beginning of these protests was amazing, and the fact that Mossad had published a post on X telling Iranians, "We are in the field with you," is so important and meaningful because it lets Iranians know that they are not alone and that Mossad is on the ground working to try to help these protesters. Iranians on the streets need support, but at a minimum, they need leaders around the world to just publicly declare solidarity with them. They need America and the entire West to make it clear that they stand shoulder to shoulder with the people and continue to bring attention to the protest movement internationally. This is why Donald Trump's post on Truth Social said that the United States will come to the rescue of the Iranian people. This is what Western leaders should be doing, and public statements like this are not enough. Western leaders should be giving these protesters practical, logistical, and cyber support, providing internet access to help Iranians stay online when the regime shuts it down, providing secure communication tools to evade surveillance, protecting activists from cyber attacks and digital tracking. They should be providing real-time intelligence to protesters. They should be amplifying dissidents instead of regime propaganda. This kind of assistance does not choose Iran's future for its people. It gives them the tools to choose it themselves. If democracies claim to stand for freedom, dignity, and sovereignty, then helping peaceful protesters survive against an authoritarian regime is what is needed. This is not about foreign policy or intervention. It's about solidarity with a population whose basic rights are being systematically denied. When a regime survives by censoring the internet, jailing dissenters, and killing unarmed civilians, helping the people communicate and organize and protect themselves is an extension of democratic values. So with that, let us tell the people of Iran that we in Israel stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and we will be the ones speaking up for you when the regime attempts to silence you. Now, let's talk about Venezuela. On Saturday, January 3rd, the U.S. struck the Venezuelan capital city of Caracas and then announced that President Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife, have been captured and transported out of the country. The operation happened overnight, and from what we understand, it happened so quickly that Maduro was not even able to reach his safe room in time. He will be arraigned in federal court in the coming days for drug offenses and other crimes committed against the U.S. Maduro's wife and his sons have also been indicted. Trump later shared a photo of Maduro on a U.S. naval ship heading to New York, where the dictator and his wife will be held in a detention center charged with weapon and drug offenses. Now, there's a lot to unpack about Venezuela, and I've already seen a lot of people explaining the history of the country and the way in which Hugo Chavez ruined the country and how Nicolas Maduro made it a lot worse. One of the richest countries in South America became one of the poorest under these two, and essentially turned Venezuela into a failed state. Between the Chavez regime and the Maduro regime, they've destroyed the economy, there's no foreign investment, and the country has faced international sanctions. About 8 million Venezuelans fled the country because of these two. That is 1/4 of the population. Can you imagine what 1/4 of your country having to leave looks like because things have gotten so bad? Venezuelans fled to Colombia, many across Latin America, and many to the United States. The Maduro regime destroyed the economy and made it essentially impossible to live in Venezuela. So I encourage everyone interested to take a look into the history in detail, and more specifically to speak to Venezuelans who've lived through it all, and not to privileged Americans who have no idea what they're talking about. But what I do want to discuss here is what comes next. What does this mean for Israel, America, and the world, frankly? There have been a number of reasons laid out by Trump as to why this operation was necessary. One is drugs. Another is oil. It is believed that Venezuela has the largest reserves of oil in the world. Another reason is the allegation that Maduro has been releasing some of his criminals and gangs into the U.S. We know the CIA has been on the ground in Venezuela for months now, and clearly there wasn't much of a fight. The U.S. went in strategically, taking out power, taking out key facilities, and ultimately they were able to arrest Maduro. There had been conversations for weeks about a negotiated exit for the dictator, but as the Secretary of State Marco Rubio said at the press conference, Maduro kept playing games. He tried to posture, tried to assert authority he didn't really have. Eventually, the U.S. lost its patience. Now, here's a more detailed timeline. In 2020, the U.S. charged Maduro and 14 members of his inner circle with narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, money laundering, and corruption. It offered a $15 million reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest. In 2024, Maduro was declared the winner of the presidential election, even though voting tallies collected showed that the opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, won by a landslide. The countries that recognized Maduro's so-called victory in 2024 included Cuba, China, Russia, North Korea, and the Islamic Republic of Iran and Assad's Syria. These were the types of governments that were willing to legitimize Maduro's election. And it was very clear to the international community, and especially clear to the Venezuelan people, that Maduro did not win that election. Because of that, Maduro has long been viewed internationally as the illegitimate leader of Venezuela. Now in 2025, the U.S. increased its reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest to $25 million. This reward then doubled in August of 2025 to $15 million. If you watch the press conference with Trump, Hegseth, and Rubio, they reiterated there has been indictment on Maduro for a while. In fact, Rubio made the joke that America just saved itself $15 million when they arrested Maduro themselves. In September of 2025, the U.S. launches strikes on what it says were drug smuggling boats targeting vessels in the Pacific and the Caribbean. Between September and December, more than 100 people were killed in the strikes. October 2025, Trump authorizes the CIA to conduct covert operations inside of Venezuela. Maduro addresses the people of the United States in a television address saying, "No war, yes peace." All of this led up to what happened over the weekend and led to Trump's announcement that the U.S. will be temporarily running Venezuela. I still have no idea what that means. He might be serious, or this might be another ploy by Trump to say things like he did about the Gaza Riviera, maybe as a political tactic to make his enemies do what he wants them to do, but we have yet to see how this pans out. I also want to mention that some commentators who are happy about Maduro's arrest are also saying that they're worried in the way that it was done because they feel that Trump's aim here is oil in Venezuela, which he talked about several times in the press conference, more than he talked about the stability and future of Venezuela. Now, has the U.S. violated international law? There are arguments that are saying both things. Is there precedent for something like this? Yes. Only time will tell what will actually happen next. Remember, it's only the beginning of the week, so who knows where we'll be by the end of it. And if there's anyone whose actions we can never predict, it's U.S. President Donald Trump's. One thing we do know for sure is that the only entity that is more terrified than Maduro right now is the Islamic regime in Iran. Venezuela under Maduro has become a hub for America's adversaries, including the regime, which used the country to evade U.S. sanctions, move oil, fuel, and weapons. Several years ago, the Iranian regime concluded a major 20-year cooperation treaty with Venezuela. One of its many provisions was secretly transferring 1 million hectares of Venezuelan farmland to Iranian control. The regime's proxy, Hezbollah, runs military training centers in restricted sections of Venezuela. The alliance with the Maduro regime provides Tehran with opportunities to target U.S. interests and spread its influence across Latin America. Then there's Russia, which relied on Venezuela as a strategic partner near the United States with military, intelligence, and diplomatic access in Latin America. China risked billions in loans, infrastructure investments, and long-term influence for Venezuela. Outing Maduro disrupts this entire network, the entire axis of resistance. With the U.S. military presence surrounding Venezuela, the collapse of the Maduro regime could weaken the broader authoritarian network that challenged the U.S. Whatever your thoughts are, the stakes go way beyond Venezuela itself. Under Maduro, the country fueled mass poverty and forced migration, transnational crime and drug trafficking, and it allowed foreign adversaries to operate dangerously close to the U.S. Maduro's fall could reshape security across Latin America and set the tone for how authoritarian systems are confronted in the future. The big picture? This isn't just a Venezuelan story. It's a test case for the entire region. What comes next will determine whether that side of the hemisphere becomes safer or far more fragile. As we watch these events unfold, from Jerusalem to Tehran to Washington and Caracas, let us remember that we must be responsible and accountable for how we talk about what happens next. These actions affect all of us, and so I thank you for joining me in having another deep discussion on Off the Record. We'll see you again next time.
Well, the trend of nations, large and small, moving their embassies to Jerusalem is continuing. Samoa is now reportedly set to open an embassy in Jerusalem this year, another diplomatic win for Israel and a growing trend among Pacific nations. Samoan Prime Minister Schmidt announced that his foreign ministry will begin preparations to open an official mission in Jerusalem in 2026. Speaking to Christian leaders with the flags of Samoa and Israel behind him. The move follows similar decisions by Fiji and Papua New Guinea, highlighting faith-based diplomacy. Samoa, a predominantly Christian nation of about 22,000 people, has maintained relations with Israel since 1972, cooperating in areas like health, agriculture, technology, and energy. The Israeli embassy in Wellington, New Zealand, currently handles relations with the Pacific nation. And now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning that Israel's south is slipping out of state control. During a high-level security tour of the Negev, Netanyahu said the region has become a dangerous mix of criminal and security threats. He's promised a national effort to restore law and order. ILTV's India Neftali has the details. India?
Yes, Emily, the Prime Minister is calling the situation in the Negev out of control. Netanyahu visited southern Israel yesterday, where he toured the region alongside senior ministers and security officials. There he laid out what he described as a national plan to reassert state governance in the Negev. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu toured the Negev yesterday with Defense Minister Israel Katz, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, and senior officials from the police, Shin Bet, and the IDF. During the visit, Netanyahu warned that criminal activity and security threats in the Negev have merged into a single front. He cited tens of thousands of illegal weapons, widespread arms smuggling, and drone activity crossing Israel's borders. The Prime Minister said a large-scale police operation is already underway and stressed that the government is determined to get it under control. Netanyahu received operational briefings from security forces, including updates on efforts to seize illegal weapons and disrupt smuggling routes. He also reviewed a developing 5-year government plan focused on expanding settlement and infrastructure development along Israel's southern borders, including the Nitzana area near Egypt.
אנחנו באים להחזיר את הנגב למדינת ישראל. זה אומר התיישבות בקנה מידה שלא הכרנו. זה אומר הסדרה גם לתושבים הבדואים. אבל זה אומר בראש ובראשונה החזרת חוק וסדר.
Netanyahu said the plan combines 3 major pillars: expanding settlement, regulating Bedouin communities, and restoring governments through enforcement. Defense Minister Israel Katz described strengthening the Negev as a strategic defense priority, not only for Israel's borders, but for its civilian home front. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said police and security forces will continue operating in the region as long as necessary to restore safety and state authority. Prime Minister Netanyahu sent a clear message that bringing the Negev back under control is now being treated as both a security mission and a national priority. Netanyahu said the effort will require sustained law enforcement, long-term planning, and a stronger state presence in Israel's south. Back to you, Emily.
All right, thank you, India, for that update.
And moving on, we look at how United Hatzalah prepares for mass casualty incidents. And that's why training saves lives. Joining us is Rachel Zubeda to break down what the drills are, why they matter, and how they translate into real emergencies. Well, Rachel, I know that you're an expert because you just got a master's degree in it. So break it down for us. What is a mass casualty incident?
So a mass casualty incident is when there is more victims and more people that got affected from an emergency incident than the amount of responders that can come and help those incidents.
How does it differ from a real casualty incident? I mean, United Hatzalah deals with many multi-casualty incidents.
Right. So there's all the time, every second, every minute, there's something that's going on in Israel. Mass casualty incidents, it's when you have a big amount of victims, can be dozens, can be more. We saw in the past few years in Israel the amount of real MCIs that happen, unfortunately. So what happens is the second that it started an MCI, a real MCI, we send dozens and dozens of emergency vehicles and emergency responders.
I imagine you must coordinate also with the IDF and with
everyone,
with the police,
and with
everyone.
the IDF.
So
yeah.
these exercises that you do are coordinated with everyone together.
Right.
Well, that must be quite the operation.
It is. It is. So to make it happen, we work from. It takes us around 2 months of preparedness for an MCI drill, from preparing and understanding what kind of accident or what kind of a scenario we want. We learn from every real MCI. If you think what happened in the last year, so it was the war of the 12 days with Iran. There was a lot of real MCIs, real collapsed buildings.
Yeah.
We took from that scenarios real details, real stuff that we, as United Hatzalah, we as an organization, with the police, with the IDF, the stuff that we need to learn, and we put that in the drills. That's how we get better.
So I imagine you practice for the things that are more likely. I see signs along the Tel Aviv beach about tsunami possibilities. And of course, sometimes we do reports about earthquakes in our region. There are so many different kind of casualties to worry about. How do you sleep at night?
We don't. No, but there is so many different kind of real-time emergency events that can happen. We try to practice and drill the most amount of real events that can happen in each sector of Israel. So if we practice in the northern Israel, we'll practice the events that can happen, most likely happened, if it's rockets, if it's an earthquake, if it's flooding or a fire, and that's how we practice and prepare.
Since 2023, since the October 7th massacre, I imagine many people have joined your efforts and are taking part in some of these exercises.
Yeah, thousands.
Thousands?
Thousands. If you think about since October 7 and now, we have over 8,000 volunteers, and we grow each year between 1,000
and 2,000. And they all get
2,000.
this kind of training, this special training for mass casualty incidents as well?
Each volunteer gets, in the end of his training, to become a medic or paramedic, depends of his specialty, gets mass casualty training, and for after they finish their practice. And also we do huge ones, which could be a sector of Israel, the north of Israel, I don't know, 500 volunteers, a huge mass casualty event.
Well, let me just say that I cannot think of an organization that has done more amazing, holy work in this country since October 7th than United Hatzalah. Rachel, thank you so much for being with us today at ILTV.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here is your roundup of the latest developments. Well, we open with Iran, where the death toll in anti-government protest continues to grow as the demonstrations have entered their third week. Iranian authorities have confirmed that at least 2,000 people have been killed and over 10,000 arrested, with opposition sources putting the number of fatalities as far higher. Demonstrations, strikes, and civil disobedience continue across the country. This despite the regime's crackdown, signaling deep and widespread unrest. Now, the White House says that after several warnings were ignored by the regime, diplomacy still remains an option, but it warns Tehran not to underestimate President Trump's readiness to use military force. U.S. officials say that President Trump has not made a final decision and currently leans towards military action, with some scenarios including striking first and talking later. Now, President Trump did announce last night on his Truth social media that effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. The Chinese embassy to the U.S. tweeted in response that China, Iran's largest trade partner, will firmly oppose any illicit unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction, and will take all necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. And there was this comment from a foreign ministry spokesman in Beijing condemning the tariffs. Meanwhile, Iran is escalating its rhetoric against the U.S. and Israel. Iranian Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi saying that Iran has obtained extensive documents and evidence linking the recent unrest across the country to the U.S. and Israel, claiming that the Mossad is attempting to direct such terrorist attacks. Araghchi said at a press conference that beginning on June 8th, terrorists and armed groups carrying weapons entered protest sites and opened fire on police and civilians with the aim of steering demonstrations toward violence and chaos. He also said Iran does not seek war, but is fully prepared for it, adding the regime is ready for serious and pragmatic negotiations with the U.S., but the talks must be based on fairness, equality, and mutual respect, rather than unilateral pressure or directives from Washington.
رسانه‌های اسرائیل پر است از ادعاهایی که انجام شده که اونها مشغول طراحی عملیات در ایران هستند. آقای پومپئو که فرد کمی نیست، رئیس سازمان CIA بوده در زمان آقای ترامپ. ایشون توییت زده و میگه که من سال جدید رو به ایرانیانی که در خیابان‌ها هستند و به مأمورین موساد که در کنار اونها حرکت میکنند تبریک میگم. یعنی یک اعتراف صریح که مأمورین موساد تلاش کردن که این جریان تروریستی رو هدایت بکنن.
IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Effie Defrin tweeted this comment overnight. In recent days, many rumors have spread against the backdrop of the situation in Iran. As was clarified previously, the IDF is prepared for defense and on alert for surprise scenarios if required. The protests in Iran are an internal matter. And here in Israel, heavy rain and unusually strong winds, some reaching up to 110 kilometers an hour along the Mediterranean coast, have caused flooding in multiple areas, including the Jerusalem region, Route 90 towards Eilat, Netanya, the Judean desert, and the Dead Sea area. Several people were rescued after the vehicles became stranded in high water. Emergency crews also treated a number of individuals for light injuries caused by falling tree branches. Intense winds and thunderstorms and heavy rain are expected to continue in northern and central Israel throughout the night. A Palestinian woman in the Shufat camp in East Jerusalem was reported killed after being struck by a heavy object during flooding of her home. And that ends this update here on ILTV. You can, of course, check our app. Just scan that barcode on your screen. Thanks for joining us.
When you buy from Blessed by Israel, you're not just shopping, you're standing with the families of Israel's heartland. Every bottle of delicious olive oil, handcrafted necklace, or jar of honey carries the spirit of Judea and Samaria. These, along with many more products, are the tastes, scents, and stories of the Promised Land, made by people rebuilding our biblical homeland every day. Shop now at blessedbyisrael.com and use ILTV's special code BLESSISRAEL for 10% off on your first order.
Looking for some guidance for when to tell someone you've had breast cancer and a mastectomy, no reconstruction if you haven't yet met in person.
So I don't think it's relevant if you're not meeting in person. Like, we need to meet in person. Right. I need to see. Do we have a little chemistry between us? Do I like you? Do you like me? Is it mutual? Is there something going on? We need to get past, there's beginning, middle, and end stage of dating. Beginning dating is question. Do I like you? Do you like me? We need to get past that. We need to be to a stage where, yeah, I like you. You like me. Oh, there's something here. We're dating. We're not serious and ready to get married, but I trust you. There's something going on. When should I say it? When you're important to me and I feel important to you and we're looking to build something, then we start to open up. Welcome to the Jewish Matchmaker podcast on ILTV. I'm Aliza Ben Shalom, your host, and today we are taking your questions. If you've been thinking about dating, relationships, if you've got something going on and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, and you just want answers, you can message us at Aliza Ben Shalom on Instagram or at marriagemindedmentor.com//podcasts. Anyway, we want to hear from you, and we have questions today that Sarah is going to read out to us, and hopefully you'll gain some clarity, some wisdom, and walk away with something to change your life or advice for somebody else.
Amazing. we diving right in? You ready?
Let's go.
Question number 1. Hi, Eliza. I've been dating my boyfriend for about 6 months now. We waited about 5 months for him to meet my 3-year-old daughter, and they hit it off. About a month into our relationship, he was told that in January he will be laid off from his very good job. Once laid off, he'll still get 10 months worth of salary plus unemployment. He's also renting out his house for income while looking for a new job. My mom doesn't think he should move in or be around my daughter all that much until he finds a job, but we just don't know how long that will be. He did tell me if he doesn't find a job right away, he'll take any job to bring in more income. I see a life with this person, and I feel that leaving him because he lost his job is unfair because he really checks all my boxes. Can you please give me any advice on what I should do and how to handle things with my mom?
Okay, love this question. So thank you for bringing it to the light and bringing it to the table. I think that when we are talking about jobs, they come and go, right? You have employment today, you don't have employment next week, something comes around and it's even better and more amazing, but it only lasts 2 years and then something new comes. But what I heard in the question was, but he's willing to take anything to make it work, like to get by for now. Motivation matters more than the job itself. The fact that he is willing to do something to make a shift, even if it's temporary, while still looking for something more permanent, that to me is golden, because doesn't matter what happens, doesn't matter how many jobs he'd end up losing, he's always going to look for something. Now, I'm going to take that back for a minute, because it does matter if he would continuously lose jobs. But it sounds like this is a man, right, consistent.
No, he's had this job
stable,
for a while. Yeah.
Right, totally reliable.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, it sounds like you have a gem of a human, number one. Second of all, I think that you should stick with him. I just want to address like the moving in together thing, because I think that that's the second piece that you didn't. You asked the question, but it was more about the job.
It was. The question was, her mom doesn't think that he should move in yet without a job and not to be around her kid all that much.
Right. So I agree with not being around the kid that much.
Okay.
And I agree with not moving in, but not because of the job.
Tell me more.
Right. So I think that he shouldn't move in because with children, it is very difficult. They have, in their head, somebody moves in, that's their new father. That's a replacement human for somebody in their life, or somebody that they never had. And if you're not engaged, you're not married, you're not moving towards building a life together, then this person can come in and out of your life, and that's not very stable or fair to the child. And it's not healthy, if we're being really honest. So I would really say that it's important that you consider where this relationship is going, and if it's moving towards engagement, marriage, great. At that time, he can move in. The moving in situation to me has nothing to do with the job, although I happen to agree with your mom. Don't move in.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like he's a good human. Definitely don't give him up because he lost his job, because he seems like the type of person who's going to do what it takes to get the income.
Right.
Not moving in, also good point, but nothing to do with the job.
Right. Totally different reason.
Okay.
Next
All
question.
Right. Next question. This comes in from Camilla. I've been seeing someone for 4 dates now. He's super attentive, understanding, wants to get married and have kids, but he's much slower than I am. He doesn't like traveling, doesn't enjoy leaving the place where he was born and raised, which is Brooklyn, and I'm totally the opposite. I feel like there's chemistry, but our personalities are very different. What do I do?
It's so interesting because when we have a values alignment and a values conflict simultaneously, it pulls at the heart and the head. Like it kind of, it's really confusing because our values and like who we are and what we want in, let's say, a family is aligned, but what we want in a lifestyle is not aligned. So
wait. I love how you just like split that up. Family versus lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Those are the two things. And the family part makes sense. And then the question is, but how are you going to live the lifestyle? So for anybody who is single and looking and loves to travel, if you're going to build your life around traveling, okay, so build your life around traveling with your family. Most families don't do that.
Right.
It's pretty common to just have a place, settle down, be where you are, maybe go on vacation a couple times a year, once a year, whatever it is. But to actually have a lifestyle that's like active and go, 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 it's a different kind of go, right? We're going to school. We're going to pick somebody up. We're going to drop somebody off. We're going to do a play date. So it's not, the life that you have now isn't the same kind of life. Now, we also have before kids, kids, and then after kids. And that lifestyle isn't going to necessarily align.
I feel like those of us who are still single don't fully get that, or those of us who don't have kids yet don't realize how much it's going to change.
Right. So the other thing is also it changes drastically with children, but then as you grow up, so like our kids, our youngest is 12, our oldest is almost 22, and we're in such a different stage, and we have different hobbies/interests. So we really like to do very different things. Like we went on one vacation and he's like, let's go fishing. And I was like, I'm not going fishing.
Let's not.
I was like, let's go for a bike ride. And he's like, I'll meet you for lunch. I was like, yes, I'm so excited to meet you for lunch. And then we met for lunch and I was like, great, how was fishing? He's like, awesome. He's like, how's the bike ride? I was like, I loved it, right? We had a fabulous time, but we did go somewhere. Like we did travel, not so far. We went, we drove an hour and a half. We stayed, at a hotel near the beach and just took a day or two to ourselves to relax without the kids. But it wasn't traveling the world. And we never really built our life and our lifestyle on that. If I had a partner that was chasing to travel the world and I just wanted to build a family, it would be very hard. So I think that she needs to just take a moment and ask herself, how much travel do I need? And visualize it out. What does it look like? Like think about the whole year from beginning to end. How many trips are you taking? What kind of trips are you taking? How far are you going? And he's going to move at a slower pace. Can you slow your pace down? Maybe he speeds his up a little and you meet somewhere in the middle. Or maybe you're going to say, no, our preferences are too different even though our values are aligned.
Right. I almost feel like there's also room for compromise in the sense of like, if he's not looking to move out of Brooklyn, let's say, right? Where can she find her adventure within that? Like, do they take 2 or 3 big family trips a year that he's willing to go on knowing that they, stay in Brooklyn?
Or can't she can travel on her own. I know some people are like, but I want to travel with my partner. But you don't have to. You can travel with friends. You can travel with other family members, coworkers. There's so many other people to do that with. And you can live your life with a person who has your values, your day-to-day values versus your lifestyle or hobbies or interests.
Which, by the way, I feel like people don't talk about enough. I was just talking to a friend about this. I feel like people don't talk enough about how important it is and also how you absolutely could do a girlfriend getaway.
Right.
Like you can and satisfy that need and that desire to get out and travel and explore or whatever. If your husband's not that type, you don't need to do it with him.
And you don't have to give it up because he doesn't want to do it. You just build your life and your lifestyle around it. So my advice to the listeners, get a little creative. Explore this. Don't give it up. You have values that are in alignment and explore how could this work and see if it can. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. You can move on, but at least you'll have fully looked into it in a way that's really appropriate without ditching him too soon.
Amazing. Perfect. Love it. Okay, next question from Jessica. Eliza, thank you for all the information you provide. I'm 55 years old, 1 year divorced, and just about to put myself out in the dating world again. Looking for some guidance for when to tell someone you've had breast cancer and a mastectomy, no reconstruction if you haven't yet met in person.
If you haven't met in person, so I don't think it's relevant if you're not meeting in person. Like, we need to meet in person. I need to see. Do we have a little chemistry between us? Do I like you? Do you like me? Is it mutual? Is there something going on? We need to get past, there's beginning, middle, and end stage of dating. Beginning dating is question. Do I like you? Do you like me? We need to get past that. We need to be to a stage where, yeah, I like you. You like me. Oh, there's something here. We're dating. We're not serious and ready to get married, but I trust you. There's something going on. I would say also it's going to depend on how soon physical intimacy comes up in your relationship.
Right.
My advice anyway is to do the 5-date challenge with no touching. And if you want to do a 10-date challenge or take things further or slower, with pleasure. I'd be like, yes, it's a great method for building connection.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons that this could be beneficial to you outside of your own medical personal reason, where this could just benefit you to delay having a conversation that is only relevant to somebody that's important to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment, because everybody's like, but when should I say it? When you're important to me and I feel important to you,
and we're looking to build something, then we start to open up. And I wouldn't start by sharing that as your first share, like as we open up to whatever our, as people would call it, skeletons in the closet, or those hidden private things that we don't share with everybody. I would start with something small.
Right.
Something, I don't know, almost insignificant compared to that. Share. Let them share. Build the connection. And then say, you know, I had a medical procedure, and here's, you know, the story, and here's what happened, and here's where I'm at today, right? Mm-hmm. Also give somebody information, because if my mind is wandering, well, what happened? Well, how are you? Well, what's going to be? Well, right, all of a sudden I'm spinning out of my thinking. Right. Past, I had this thing. This is what happened. Present, here's where my health is today. Future, wow, other than X, Y, and Z, this isn't really going to affect me because it's clear I'm in remission, everything's okay, da-da-da. Right. We do or don't know whether it's genetic. We do, like, whatever information you want to share, you could share. Mm-hmm. And to open your heart to having somebody receive really personal information that's private and confidential, that's not open to the world. That means your relationship's at a certain level, and then you see how that carries. And can this person hold that in the relationship and still figure out how to move ahead?
It's so interesting because, listen, I'm not a guy, so I know it's different, but I feel like, to me, from this whole question, I'm so much more interested about what that journey was like and how that changed her as a person, and what did that mean for herself, for her relationship with God, for a relationship with her family, for a relationship with her friends. Like, there's so much, to me, the mastectomy is like the side point. And I know like the physical piece is important, but it just feels, I'm almost curious why that's the first thing that she's asking.
Well, what do you mean that she's...
Meaning, like, why is that the question that comes up?
There's nothing, everything else for her is normal in her life. And she's like, okay, so I got to share something. Right. I had a man once tell me he was 25 and he had testicular cancer. He had everything taken care of, kids, the whole thing. He had his whole story. He knew everything. He said, same question, when do I share this information? Right. And how do I share it? And will somebody accept me? And I always tell people, thank you, because that's the answer, yes. And I always tell people we all have something. Either it's something known or it's something unknown.
Yes.
Okay? So somebody who comes to you and says, well, I had cancer and I had this medical thing that I dealt with or I am dealing with. That's known. Now, you meet somebody else and they're like, no, I have nothing. I am just perfect. Everything is fine. Yeah. It's not that you have nothing. It's just that...
What's hidden?
Right. Today, there's nothing for you to share.
Right.
But in the course of your entire lifetime, we got about a 99.9% chance that you're going to be sharing something pretty significant.
I feel like we can make it 100.
Okay.
It's so funny because this reminds me, when I was dating, when I was still very much in the shidduch system, I started dating, my parents were married, they got divorced when I was 21. And I remember the difference in going to matchmakers from when from before they were divorced to after they were divorced. All of a sudden, all of the matchmakers were asking me, so how are you handling the divorce? What does that mean for your dating? Things are obviously changing now. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Nothing changed for me.
You know about it. But I've known everything I've known and everything that I've had to like process and go through, and the way it affected my dating affected it way before they ever publicly got divorced.
Right.
And I think like that's so your point is like just because you know it, or don't know it, still affected my life in one way or another. And that's what I'm going to share.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
We never know. We just never know. And what you want to know is, A, that somebody knows what's going on with their health. I'll tell you what I'm scared of.
Yeah.
I'm scared of a person who says to me, I haven't seen a doctor in the last 10 years, healthy as a horse, and everything's fine. And I'm like, so interesting. Now, you don't have to be a hypochondriac and go for every sneeze, but to not go for 10
Ever.
years, to
Yeah.
not have an evaluation, to not have a checkup, to not just have some assessment of where you're at, you don't have enough information to share.
Right.
So then there's a really big unknown, number one. And number two, it means you're likely not to take care of things until either A, it comes up, or it's way too late. So somebody who found out about something and is proactive and has taken care of it, and the body has an incredible power to heal. Really incredible power to heal if we would let it, if we would assist it, if we would be a part of this process. So I'm so much more afraid of the person that says, I'm not going to the doctor. Same thing, like, I'm not going to go to a therapist. I'm fine. Everything's fine, right? I'm scared of that person more than somebody who says, I had a problem. I worked through it. I'm on the other side. Here's where I'm at.
Right. Yes. Okay. Love it. Thank you. Next question comes from Mark. Hi, Eliza. I've been stuck on the same thought and haven't been able to work through it by myself, and it's really weighing me down. How do I feel ready to date? What are things that I can do to get there? I've tried working backward from my end goals to where I am now, but I still feel stuck. Help.
Mark is not ready to date.
Mark wants to date, wants to feel ready, doesn't feel ready, doesn't know what to do to feel ready. And I'm going to throw in, because I know you like multi-questions in one, is there ever a point where you know you're ready?
For some people.
Okay.
There are people that never feel ready to date, never feel ready to get married, almost feel like they're being kicked down the aisle, and they still end up on the other side, but it's part of a personality type. So I would ask Mark / look into this situation and say, what's going on? How about when you went to get a job? Did you feel ready to get a job? How about when you were going on vacation? Did you feel ready to take that next trip? Were you looking forward to it? Like, is this within you? Because if this is your norm, then we're just going to work with it. And we're also just going to say, listen, you're never going to feel ready, but you're going to do it anyway. There's a great book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
I knew this was coming.
By Susan Jeffers. It's fabulous. Short, quick, easy read. And it talks about these fears and these things that we have. And we're allowed to have fear. And we're allowed to do it anyway and not wait until we're feeling comfortable. Because if we wait for the comfort and the comfort never comes, then what do? It's like we have to just push through. If he's not ready because he doesn't know what his values are, he doesn't know who the type of person he wants to date, he has some trauma from the past that he hasn't overcome, like if there's something else going on, I would say let's address that first before actually moving on. But if this is just, I don't know, I don't feel ready. When I wake up in the morning, I sometimes don't feel like getting out of bed. Now I get out of bed anyway. I sometimes don't feel like doing anything. I still do something, right? So we can't always just live by our feelings, and our feelings shift and change. Literally, it's sunny outside. I'm happy. Everything's fine. It's rainy outside. No, I'm not going out. I'm done. That's it. Even my dogs react this way. I open the door. They look outside. They see it's pouring out there, and they're like, nope. Nah. That's it. They have the same thing. They don't feel like going outside. And I'm like, you gotta go. Sorry, like figure it out. And it's the thing. So I get it, but feelings aren't, they're just not static, and they're not always based on reality. They're just based on how I feel today, which is based on so many different things. So don't just go by your feeling. Just feel the fear and do it anyway.
And piggybacking off of the last question, if you feel stuck, go see a therapist or a dating coach.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could walk through it and talk through it, you could think through your values. You could think.
I actually wanted you to go into a little bit, because I think values and fears, both of those. Can you break down? Can you tell our listeners the two exercises that they should do around values and fears?
Okay, so for Mark and all of our listeners, number one, values. What do you want in a relationship? What is the thing that you are looking for? What are the I want loyalty, I want love, I want commitment, I want dedication, I want somebody who is honest or honorable, whatever the words are, the languages, whatever resonates with you, what are those values? What do you truly want and need in a relationship for that stability and comfort and growth in a relationship long term? And personality types. What type of person works for you and brings out your best side?
But not the physical stuff.
No.
Non-physical qualities.
Non-physical qualities. Looks is a whole nother category, and that's a whole nother podcast.
It's important, but it doesn't need to go on your list because it'll be such a deal breaker that if you're not attracted to the person, it's irrelevant.
Exactly. And then fears are all of those things that you have that, like, you're not feeling ready to date. Why? Well, there's probably a fear there. Did you have a bad breakup? Did your parents have a big situation? Do you have a sibling who had a terrible dating story or a friend? Or do you have no experience, so it just feels so awkward and uncomfortable for you? Like, what is going on behind the scenes that prevents you from moving into any relationship? It's not about a specific person. Right. It's just in general. And list out those fears, because when I know my values and I know my fears, I have the ability to go into dating very clear. And then when I look at somebody else, it's like I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, is that like a reflection of what I'm looking for? No. How do I know that? It's not about my feeling. It's I know it because I have a list, right, because I'm clear. And people, by the way, people get all up in arms about lists. We're going to have a moment here. Don't get all up in arms about lists, okay? If you're upset about having a list because everybody's like, make your list of your top 3 things. Don't. Please make a list of about a top 10, because you don't really only want 3 things in a person, and you're going to get a range of things, your top 10, and to a degree, right? Like, it's not going to be terrible. Most of them should be like in the good range to the great. Somewhere between good and great with your top 10 qualities is really important. After 10, icing on the cake. Because if you're going to feel so satisfied with those top 10, when you have a problem in your relationship, you're going to be like, yeah, but that's my person. I picked them for really good reasons that align with me. We might be having a bad day, or I might not be feeling connected to you, but I know why I picked you, and I know why we're in a relationship.
Right. And what I love about the fears is, like, once you have them, before you get into a relationship, if I see like, wow, that's really holding me back, I see so clearly where this fear is holding me back from dating, I can then go to a therapist, a dating coach, or myself and know exactly what I need to work on. But then even once I'm in a relationship, I can assess, is this person triggering my own fear and that's a me issue? Or is it really bad and like this came out of nowhere and it really is a we/them issue that's not my own thing?
Exactly. And for Mark, it could just be that he doesn't have a lot of experience. He doesn't really know what or how to do. And so the whole process just feels uncomfortable. Right. And it's kind of like that riding a bike. Like, you need to like learn how to do it. And then just like when you fall off, like get back on again and just do it. Yeah, just do it, like Nike says. Okay, amazing. I've loved this conversation, and I love connecting with all of you. Make sure to send your questions in at Eliza Ben Shalom on Instagram, or to our website, marriagemindedmentor.com/podcast. And until next time, remember that matches make families, families make communities, and communities change the world.
When I finish a round of Miluim and go back to civilian life, there's almost like a disconnect. It's like after the first few weeks, it feels very weird. You're looking around and you're like, no one knows that I was on a uniform yesterday. Nobody here knows. I just look like a regular guy. And then after a little while, you become disconnected from being a soldier and you really feel like a civilian. And then it feels very hard to put the uniform back on.
Welcome to The Nosh here on ILTV, and today's amazing guest is the one, the only, Shlomo Lipman, singer extraordinaire. Shlomo, thank you so much for joining me here in studio at ILTV.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Shlomo, you are like the quintessential wedding singer. Whoa. Have you ever seen the movie The Wedding Singer?
I actually have not. I've seen clips on YouTube. I've seen clips on YouTube. I haven't seen the full movie yet.
How can you not? You are the wedding singer.
I know. I have to do my homework.
You got to do your homework. You got to see. Okay, so you got to see the full movie, but the clips that you have seen, and I'm sure you've seen a few that you said, and you lived the life of a wedding singer. Are any of them true? Like, what is it to be a wedding singer, especially here in Israel?
It's unbelievable. It's one of the coolest things about being a singer-songwriter or performer in general in the Jewish world. It doesn't matter how how small you are as an artist or how big you get. It's always part of your scene. It's always something that you do. And I think that's something so amazing that even the biggest names are able to do something so amazing, which is to make a bride and groom, a chatan and kala, happy.
At what age were you when you decided that you're going to become a singer? Of course, going into the wedding industry as one of the premier wedding singers, but into the music industry itself. How did you decide? When did you decide? Tell me a little bit about how you got into this entire industry.
So I grew up in a very musical home. My grandmother was like the music teacher in the DC area. My dad played the drums, my mom played the flute. And when I was 3 years old, we went to my grandparents' house, and I was already old enough that I would be able to see a TV and understand what that is and want to watch something. My dad was like, what is something I'm able to get my son to watch? They still had cassettes then, before DVDs.
You're aging us. You're aging us.
I'm 28, but I guess, the generations move fast. He bought a few Miami Boys Choir cassettes, and I started watching them, and I became absolutely obsessed. And from when I was 3 years old, that's when I knew, when I grow up, I want to be a singer.
Where did you grow up? You said in the DC area?
Yeah, I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. We made Aliyah when I was 7 to Beit Shemesh, but my entire childhood was in DC area.
But you said your family is musical. I thought your father was in politics and did something different.
That's true. I mean,
he's not very musical.
That's very true. He started off playing. He played the drums growing up.
I had no idea. It's very cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to get him back on the drum set a little bit, but
I'd love to see that.
That would be awesome.
Do any of your other siblings or family members play with you, or
No. My sisters joke that I'm the one that took all the talent. It's really just I had a passion for it when I was a little kid, and I continued to work on it since I was 3 years old up until today.
How is it dealing with families here post October 7th in the wedding industry? What do you see different that you didn't have to think about before?
The biggest difference is just the connection and how meaningful. Every chuppah is so meaningful, but now after October 7th, every chuppah has more and more layers of meaning and emotion. Every single person there knows people that are either unfortunately not with us or fighting on the front lines. Every single chatan has friends that are fighting or he himself fought. Every single chuppah we do tefillah for the chayalim, which is something that didn't really exist that much before the war. It's unbelievable. The connection of all of Am Yisrael together is the biggest difference I've seen in the wedding industry.
And that connection is only getting stronger. And the connection to you and our homeland, our people, not only you a wedding singer, songwriter, you're actually a hero. Now, I'm not sure if it's Miluim you're in, or you were, or you drafted and stayed on. Talk to me a little bit about it, because I've been following your journey and seeing you, and we're going to talk about your dancing moves in uniform as well. But, your unit, Army service, talk to me about what you're doing and have been doing the past 2 years about.
Yeah, so when I was in active service back in 2017, I was in Golani, Brigade Gdud 51, Golani 51. I was a commander there. Went back to yeshiva. Started my life. I was in Keren B'Yavne.
Okay,
I was part of Hesder. Part of Hesder, and then got married. Went to Kollel at Leva Torah in Beit Shemesh, and then on October 7th, I was called back up to Miluim together with hundreds of thousands of others as part of a Miluim unit of people that used to be in Golani. We were called right up to the Lebanon border. We were there that night. By October 7th night, we were already stationed on the border, ready to go. Thank God.
So talk to me.
Yeah.
October 7th, and I know you said when your parents met, you were living in Beit Shemesh with your family.
Correct.
You're married now and still live in Beit Shemesh?
Still live in Beit Shemesh, yeah. Married a girl from Beit Shemesh. That's where we're based right now.
Based in Beit Shemesh.
Yeah.
So that night you got the call, the text, whatever it was, you got to go to your unit, and you just went straight up north?
Yeah, that entire day was crazy. Because I was at Leva Torah, which is a Hesder yeshiva for lone soldiers, I was basically helping soldiers out, guys in active service, the entire morning, running back and forth, making sure that guys had rides to go down south. Guys had to go to Beersheba area. I almost drove down south myself a few times to bring them there. And then they told me to go tell the guys that are still in training that they were being called up. And I realized as a reservist, if guys that are still in training are being called up, my call's going to come any second.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Guys that didn't even finish their
training, they said, guys, you're being called up right now.
So did they actually have a unit to go to? Were they part of a unit? How does that operate, with training?
Right. So the way training works is you get drafted into a certain unit, you do your training within that unit, and then once you finish your training, you go and you actually it's called going up to the Gdud. You go up to the actual I guess the actual unit that you were training in. So what they were doing is calling everybody up that was in training to go and basically, I don't know exactly what they did that day, but my assumption is that they took over certain checkposts and stuff like that for guys that are in active service, so that they're able to prepare and get ready for war. So the second they called them up, I knew my call's going to come any second. Turned on my phone. Very weird doing that on Shabbat and on Chag, but I realized that's what he had to do. And I saw that my commander said, guys, we're going to be called up any second. Get your stuff ready and be ready to go. I told my wife that it could happen any second. I told her, go to your parents. If I get called up, I'll come and I'll say goodbye. And then she went. I went back to shul, and then I checked my phone. I said, guys, we're being called up. Got onto uniform, drove to their house, knocked on the door, opened the door. She saw me in full uniform, and told her I'm going up to the Lebanon border. Don't know exactly what's going to happen, but this is what we have to do.
So now we have a lot of mutual friends. We know about each other. We've been friendly on social media for a while. But where I've been following you recently in the past almost 2 years is in uniform, in your unit. I guess you have some downtime, or maybe just a little bit of downtime, unless it's on break. But I've been following and seeing you singing and dancing in uniform. And talk to me. What made you do that, and the feedback you're getting from it? Because you became a star, like a rock star in uniform, singing beautiful melodies for people to hear and get inspired from.
The first few days of the war, I was in no mood to sing, no mood to post. I didn't want to post about it. I didn't feel like just picking up my phone and making a story. Hey guys, I'm by the Lebanon border. I didn't feel that was right. I said, this is what we're supposed to do. In 2-3 weeks, when all of this settles down, that's what we were thinking then. Then I'll go back to
2
it. I'll
years
post.
later.
Yeah, right. And we were stationed one day, and the way the war works in general, especially when you're not in combat but on border patrol, which is what we were doing at the start of the war, is you have time where you're actually on guard duty, but you have times that you're off. And there was, in between one of my shifts, one of my guys in my unit said, Benjamin Fleischman, he asked me, he's like, Shlomo, why don't you sing a little bit? I was like, dude, I'm not in the mood to sing. Well, we'll sing later. Right now we have something to do. We have to be focused. He's like, no, come on, let's sing. I was like, all right, fine. I started singing for them a little bit, and then I realized, I have a wedding band back home, and they're all doing Corona-styled weddings, tiny little weddings for people that their big weddings got canceled because of the situation. And I was like, they don't even know that I'm up here by the Lebanon border. Why don't I just make a video to send to them to kind of let them know, hey, what's going on? I was sitting down in a trench, and I made this video singing Mehera Mehera, a wedding song, sent it to them. My sound man put it on his story, and someone asked him, send this to me right now. That somehow got everywhere, and that was the start of this crazy thing that became Shlomo Littman, the singing soldier by the Lebanon border.
And it's just, but it's been spiraling. I'm seeing so many of your videos that have gone viral and shared of you just singing from your neshama, from your heart, from your soul. You're singing up there. You're protecting Israel. You literally are a hero. As you're doing that on the border, what's going through your head? What's going through your mind singing in uniform, inspiring Jews and people around the world?
It is so meaningful to me. I was thinking about it. I was talking with one of my friends a few weeks after this entire thing started, because the next day, right after that first viral video, we were on the way back from, this is crazy, the situation we were in. They gave us our guns, and we went up to guard duty without even making sure that our scopes and our barrels were aligned. It was just kind of, usually when you get a new gun, the first thing you do is you go to the shooting range, you make sure everything's working, and then you go up. But here there's no time to waste. Go and figure it out on the way. After a few days, it kind of settled. We went, we shot a little bit and made sure everything was working. We're on the way back, and there's a wedding happening in this yeshuv that we were stationed at up north. We're like, a wedding? No one's here. It was a chayal that decided, I am not pushing off my wedding. I was supposed to get married today. I'm going to get married today. We saw what was happening. I said,
so 1 second. Yeah. His family's not around.
The
bride is not around. They all came up. How did that happen?
Yeah, they all came up. The bride is there in a bridal gown, and he's in full uniform. And they decided, we are doing this. We're not pushing off our wedding. I told them, I'm a wedding singer. If you would like, I would love to sing for you guys. They said, please, we'd love it. That video has millions of views now, and it was unbelievable for me. I was talking to a friend of mine. I hadn't done anything different up by the front lines. I was the same person. I had been working on trying to get my name out there, and thank God I had started a career beforehand. But it wasn't nothing different changed, and I thought it was such an amazing thing. You know, Akiva, one of the well-known singer Akiva, he was also called up on October 7th, and I thought to myself, you know, it was almost like God was telling me, Shlomo, I'm keeping you for a rainy day. You know, you're putting in the work now, but there's going to be a time where Am Yisrael is getting, this is at the beginning of the war. The only things on social media were all the horrible videos from what happened on October 7th. And all of a sudden, here's a faceless chayal. It wasn't a well-known name. It was just a chayal singing at a wedding of another chayal. And I think that hits a lot more than if it was a well-known name beforehand. It might have been meaningful and emotional, but the fact that it's just a chayal without a name singing for another chayal, I think that hit so much deeper. And since then, I realized, aside from actually defending Am Yisrael, and afterwards we went into Lebanon and fought there, and in Syria fought there as well, I have another mission, which is to bring hope, to bring happiness, and chizuk to Am Yisrael that needs it so much.
I want to go into in a little bit what you've saw and what you've seen in Lebanon, Syria, but that's really where I got to know you a lot more and personally, because at that time, or a little after that time, I guess when you had a break from the Army, you came to the United States and you performed in concert in the United States. I know IMC hosted one of the events in Lawrence, New York. Right. That's where we got to meet each other, and you performed in uniform on stage. You had the whole crowd standing, singing with you. You're now an international sensation going around the world singing. How did you feel going from singing at weddings and, you know, locally and with your family and in Beit Shemesh and beyond here in Israel to, you know, headlining concerts in the USA and abroad?
It's something I always wanted to do since I was a little kid. That's all. I love being on stage, and there's something very different between performing at a wedding and performing on stage.
I was going to ask you, what's the difference in the mindset with, you know, singing at a wedding and on stage, when on stage you have a whole production team and crowd and a lot more going on than at a wedding, when if you're the wedding singer, you're more or less in charge of how the night's going to go.
Correct. It's a very different type of performing. I've learned to fall in love with performing at weddings as well, and it's up to the point where even when Be'ezrat Hashem I'm an A-lister, I still want to be doing weddings.
You are an A-lister.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. But even when I theoretically should stop doing weddings, I want to continue doing it. There's something very special about performing at a wedding and giving over that energy to a chatan and kala. But it's a very different type of performance. It's how you use the stage, how you dance, how you present yourself. But it's something I always wanted to do, and I think it's something so amazing. You know, a lot of times this is a very interesting concept. When I finish a round of miluim and go back to civilian life, there's almost like a disconnect. It's like after the first few weeks, it feels very weird. You're looking around and you're like, no one knows that I was on a uniform yesterday. Nobody here knows. I just look like a regular guy. And then after a little while, you become disconnected from being a soldier and you really feel like a civilian. And then it feels very hard to put the uniform back on. But I've come to learn that Am Yisrael needs it. Am Yisrael really needs it. And there are times that I just want to perform like this. And my production team says, Shlomo, you don't understand, these people, especially outside of Israel, when they see you performing on uniform and in uniform, it's something so needed, that connection, seeing someone on uniform, the energy that you're able to give over and the energy you get back. And that's just how it works. You give over the energy, you get it back, you're able to give more. And that connection between Am Yisrael as a whole and Israel, and especially a soldier, is something so amazing.
But a lot of that is the energy that they're feeling, or the emotions that, you know, the crowd is feeling. That's why you're doing it. But what is going through your mind, your soul, your body, your heart, really, when you're on stage there in your uniform and you're representing Israel, you're singing and representing the Jewish people? What is going through your head when you're on that stage looking at that crowd as they're cheering and standing for you in uniform?
Plain and simple, I feel like I'm doing what I was born to do.
What you were born to do?
100%.
It's insane. And do you get up and say, listen, I need to sing this song on stage, or I gotta, this song is more meaningful, it's gonna touch the people? How do you get your sets in line with what the crowd either anticipating or what they want?
So this is where the two worlds of concerts and weddings kind of connect and collide. we started doing, my band and I, every wedding now, we have something we call a machozet rabak. It's basically a medley of all the quote-unquote war songs.
Yeah,
The Am
I don't know
Yisrael-
what that
right.
means, but you got to
The Am
explain it a
Yisrael,
little
the Am
bit.
Yisrael Chai songs. Am Yisrael Chai, Anachnu Ma'aminim B'nei Ma'aminim, Hashem Yitbarach, Al Tira Yisrael, Al Manetzach Lo Mefached. And we've basically, that's a medley that we do as part of our wedding set. And what we've done is basically brought that onto the stage. There are obviously other songs that I do. I do some of my own music. I do covers. But part of a big bulk of what we do as part of our show is we do all of these songs that we sing on the front lines, and growing up we sang, and when I was in active service before we went on long treks or we had training exercises, we sang all these songs. And to see them now on the global stage and all of Am Yisrael kind of feeling what a regular chayal feels before he goes into battle, it's something so unbelievable.
What, at the end of the show, I've seen it myself. I've seen you speak to the crowd, take pictures, shake hands, give hugs. Any special, story or any touching moment that you could share with us that maybe someone in the crowd, or you spend a Shabbat with someone overseas during a concert, has shared with you how you've changed them or brought them something special?
That's a good question.
You had to change so many lives with what you're doing. It's just there's no other way that it can't be possible.
For sure, there's a lot of people that have. I mean, just one example from the beginning of the war. I don't know what ended up happening with this person. This is not from a show, but actually from social media and posting me singing on Madim in uniform. Somebody wrote to me that he's an EMT in New York, and he decided he wants to leave everything there, come here and start working here as an EMT. I don't know if it was in the army or to help out, but someone said, I'm leaving everything behind to go and give in Israel, and you inspired me to do that. That's something that hit me very, very deeply.
You had to inspire many people. But with that being said, I just have to backtrack a little bit and ask, with all the time that you've been spending in Miluim and you having your own business here of wedding singers, or a wedding band, how has it affected you if you weren't able to perform at these weddings? This is your livelihood. This is how you pay your bills, support your family. If you weren't able to do that, how did you survive? How do you keep on going? Or is serving in the army and serving your country that much that you'll give it all up for?
First of all, 100%, I would give it all up for that. That's for sure. And God has a plan. He takes care of everybody. When you do the right thing, then he's going to take care of you 100%, and you're going to get exactly what you're supposed to get in life. I'm very privileged that because I'm a singer, my business isn't going anywhere really. There are people that left employed jobs in businesses, and then or people that ran businesses, and then all of a sudden that business is not there, and then they've lost everything and given that up to be in the army. The army does make sure that you're subsidized financially for what you lost while you're away. But there are people that come back to civilian life, and then their business is not there,
and they almost have to start from scratch.
Right, have to start from scratch. I'm very privileged that because of the nature of my work, people are always going to be getting married, especially now that I've become this singing soldier. People are still following. They know what's going on with me, and they know, he's going to be back in civilian life. And so I've been very privileged. That hasn't really affected me, but there are definitely people that give it all up to make sure that they're able to watch over the Jewish world.
When you are back in reserve duty in Miluim, do you feel now that it's almost a mission that you have to put out some songs in uniform, you have to get out and on stage and sing for them, like this is what people are wanting, but not only wanting, but it gives them the chizuk to support and keep going?
There are times that it feels like I have to force to do it, because for me, at the beginning of the war, I really needed it as well. I needed to sing for people. I felt like I needed to express what I'm feeling inside and give over to the Jewish world and to the world in general. And as the time has gone on and the war has gone on, I felt that personally a little bit less. But every time I do post, I see how much other people, the world outside, people that are away from the army, because I feel it, right? You're in uniform. You're going into Lebanon, fighting there. You're going into Syria or on the border. I feel it. I'm very connected. But I feel like sometimes it's almost harder for the people not on the front lines. Sometimes we think our Chaylim have it. It's really the hardest for the families. First of all, I have a wife. I have 2 kids at home. I'm with my guys on the front lines, and I'm actively doing the work, and I feel a lot of, first of all, I feel connected, and I feel the meaning behind what I'm doing. But the families and Am Yisrael as a whole, people that are not on the front lines, I feel like they need it even way more. They need the chizuk, they need the strength a lot more than our soldiers on the front lines. So every time I push myself to, no, Am Yisrael needs this, and I get my guitar or wherever I am and I make a video to kind of bring chizuk. It's never been about how can I use this to my advantage. Since the very beginning of the war, I didn't want to post at the beginning of the war. It just happened, right? It happened, and I realized I'm just giving over to people that need it. It's not about me. It's amazing. Hashem has his ways, and I've obviously
It
gained.
might not be about you, but let's make something
sure.
about you. If someone wants to contact you and hire you because they're hearing your amazing story and everything else, how can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, Shlomo Lippman Music. That's my Instagram. If you want to
That's
find
what
me,
I follow, so I know where he is.
If you want to follow my Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, it's all Shlomo Lippman. And hey, if you have an event happening or if you have a show anywhere in the world, I want to connect with Am Yisrael. That's my mission, and I can't wait to celebrate with you.
Now that it is your mission, and you had many missions, I don't know what you can and can't talk about, but you are a soldier, a hero of the Jewish nation. You served, as you said, up on the border with Lebanon. You said Syria. I don't know how much you went into Syria, and if you knocked on a door in Damascus and said, "Hey, I'm here." But can you share some stories or anything about your service up north, what you did, and like what your feelings were as you're protecting Israel and the Jewish people around the world?
100%. I'll share 2 stories that are unbelievable. The first one was, so we were first stationed by the Lebanon border, then we were stationed by the Syrian border, and then we ended up going into Lebanon and into Syria. I was stationed by the Syrian border during the first Iranian attack, and they told us, guys, phones aside, all right, listen, tonight there's a 99% chance that Iran is going to attack. Just so you know, a large member of the personnel up north are being moved down south, not because they need them down south, but because they don't want to have mass casualties. But you guys are here, so good luck. Okay, I was part of a force called Carmel Aleph, and anytime anything happens in our area, we drive right away to one of the many routes that go from deep into Syria into Israel to block off that route. And I was on the top of a mountain, on top of a little hill, when the first Iranian attack happened. It all happened right above my head. And really, that was the first time that I felt, sometimes we feel like we're part of the equation, right? I have a gun, there's a terrorist near me. I can, if I practice a lot beforehand and I'm quick, I can eliminate him before he gets to me. But here, it doesn't matter how much I shoot a ballistic missile, I'm not part of this equation at all. And I literally just started singing Vihisha Amd up there because I realized in the end of the day, it's all in God's hands. And we're just here to try to, do our part, but it's all in his hands. That's the first story. Second thing is we went into Lebanon after a year of preparing, and we talked about this while we were by the border. It's how is the state of Israel going to handle going into Lebanon? They always told us from the very beginning of my training back in 2017, Hamas is child's play compared to Hezbollah. And that was before they had years of training in the civil war in Syria. These are trained fighters. This is going to be a crazy, crazy war. How is Israel going to be able to deal with that? Nasrallah gets killed, and we go into Lebanon, and they all ran away. We went into places that were supposed to be swarming with terrorists. We found crazy, crazy amounts of ammunition that one of my senior commanders says he thinks that if they would have infiltrated from the north, from Metula, where we ended up going in, we would have had to fight them off in Tel Aviv area. That's how crazy this was. We found go bags ready to go, motorcycles. Just give us the word. And they were going to infiltrate Israel. And we found all these, and these terrorists ran away. We went into the places that were supposed to be the most dangerous places and basically took it over without a fight. Unbelievable. The miracles that we saw in Lebanon, unbelievable.
And the crazy part is we unfortunately know a lot of stories from the First and Second Lebanon War, and it was nothing like what you experienced. Thank God you experienced what you had, and not,
Correct.
Right. previously, unfortunately what many have experienced, but for you to say that, but to see what was being planned and what they had, you had to be like, this could have been insane, and it is insane finding it afterwards, but it could have gone much worse.
It was unimaginable. It was unbelievable. We're looking around, we're like, this is crazy. There was a Shabbat afternoon that we were in Lebanon when they were bringing in people from Handasa to tear down houses. Bringing in bulldozers and the such, and we're just like chilling around. We're there to make sure that we watch over them, no one comes near, and we're just like chilling there on a Shabbat, and we're like, we're in Lebanon right now, just like hanging out on Shabbat afternoon. What? How is that? Like we all pictured what it's going to look like when we go into Lebanon and have to fight, and we're like, this is crazy. It's unbelievable. This is nothing like what we thought it was going to be, and it's all just, to me, open miracles.
It is all unbelievable and crazy. But when you say picture, you were born in America. You grew up for a short period of life in America before your family moved and made Aliyah to Israel. You wear the uniform. You protect Israel. I personally think you protect the Jewish people around the world. How do you see yourself? How do you picture yourself from someone who was brought up in America, moved to Israel, and now part of the greatest army our nation has ever had? How does that make you feel, and how do you see yourself?
Incredibly privileged. Incredibly privileged. I could have very easily just been a regular kid growing up in the States, staying in the States. I played baseball. I played in the Israel national team. I sing, obviously. I could have made a career there. I'm always very thankful to my parents that they made Aliyah back when I was 7, because I don't know what would happen, if I stayed there for longer. I feel incredibly privileged. It is a gift. It's a mission. It's something that I wouldn't give away for the world. I'm so thankful that I get to be part of God's army.
Now, as thankful as you are, have you, in any of your travels, have you ever experienced the opposite side, any anti-Semitism or anti-Israel rhetoric?
Not really. I really haven't. I mean, I've obviously experienced it online like everybody else, but in person, not really. I've really just seen so much love, so much support. The Jewish people, the Jewish community around the world are amazing. And I think that throughout this war, the IDF went from being the Israeli army to the Jewish army.
And what's up next for Shlomo Littman? Where are you going next? What are you doing? What's in the pipeline?
All right, so right now I am releasing singles from my upcoming album, my debut album. As of now, I'm really focused on weddings here in Israel and shows abroad. I'm going to be back in the States, Hanukkah time, Be'ezrat Hashem, for another tour. We just got back from a tour in New York during August. And the second that the album is out, when the album will be out, I do not know, because every time I think I know it's going to be out, I get called for another round of Miluim, which is totally fine. It's going to be out when it's out. My goal is to make sure that it is the highest level music and that I put it together properly for the people that are going to end up listening to it. The second that it's out, I'm going to go on a tour both here in Israel and around the world.
Just a 10-second message. You as a soldier protecting, once again, Israel and everything else, what do you, because you are from America and have family, I'm sure, still in America, what is one message you have to the people in America and around the world watching Israel, watching the IDF in today's day and age?
You always have a home here in Israel. No matter what's going on around the world, we are always here to welcome you with open arms. This is your home at the end of the day. This is the home of the Jewish people. It's the future of the Jewish people. Just know that all the Chayalim, all the people in Israel, we are waiting to accept you with open arms whenever you so choose. And if you come to visit or you want to make your life here, we want to be part of that together with you. And my message for everyone around the world is that it's going to be good. Sometimes it feels like, what is going on? My new single that just came out, Kama Tov, it's all about that. I wrote that by the Syrian border when that attack happened, that Iranian attack. Kama Tov holech liot po. First of all, it is so good already. We believe that God is good. It's always great. We just don't always see it. And we're going to see it really soon. It's going to be so good.
Come see in Israel. Shlomo Littman, I want to thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you for having me
today. You are very inspirational, besides a great singer, but very, very inspirational. Keep doing good. Your family should be very, very proud of you. All of Israel, the Jewish nation, the world is very, very proud of you. I want to thank everyone for tuning in for another amazing episode of The Nosh, exclusively on ILTV. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here is your roundup of the latest developments. Well, we open with Iran, where the death toll in anti-government protest continues to grow as the demonstrations have entered their third week. Iranian authorities have confirmed that at least 2,000 people have been killed and over 10,000 arrested, with opposition sources putting the number of fatalities as far higher. Demonstrations, strikes, and civil disobedience continue across the country, this despite the regime's crackdown signaling deep and widespread unrest. Now, the White House says that after several warnings were ignored by the regime, diplomacy still remains an option, but it warns Tehran not to underestimate President Trump's readiness to use military force. U.S. officials say that President Trump has not made a final decision and currently leans towards military action, with some scenarios including striking first and talking later. Now, President Trump did announce last night on his Truth social media that effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. The Chinese embassy to the U.S. tweeted in response that China, Iran's largest trade partner, will firmly oppose any illicit unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction and will take all necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. And there was this comment from a foreign ministry spokesman in Beijing condemning the tariffs. Meanwhile, Iran is escalating its rhetoric against the U.S. and Israel. Iranian Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi saying that Iran has obtained extensive documents and evidence linking the recent unrest across the country to the U.S. and Israel, claiming that the Mossad is attempting to direct such terrorist attacks. Araghchi said at a press conference that beginning on June 8th, terrorists and armed groups carrying weapons entered protest sites and opened fire on police and civilians with the aim of steering demonstrations toward violence and chaos. He also said Iran does not seek war, but is fully prepared for it, adding the regime is ready for serious and pragmatic negotiations with the U.S., but the talks must be based on fairness, equality, and mutual respect, rather than unilateral pressure or directives from Washington.
رسانه‌های اسرائیل پر است از ادعاهایی که انجام شده که اونها مشغول طراحی عملیات در ایران هستند. آقای پومپئو که فرد کمی نیست، رئیس سازمان CIA بوده در زمان آقای ترامپ. ایشون توییت زده و میگه که من سال جدید رو به ایرانیانی که در خیابان‌ها هستند و به مأمورین موساد که در کنار اونها حرکت میکنند تبریک میگم. یعنی یک اعتراف صریح که مأمورین موساد تلاش کردند که این جریان تروریستی رو هدایت بکنن.
IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Effie Defrin tweeted this comment overnight. In recent days, many rumors have spread against the backdrop of the situation in Iran. As was clarified previously, the IDF is prepared for defense and on alert for surprise scenarios if required. The protests in Iran are an internal matter. And here in Israel, heavy rain and unusually strong winds, some reaching up to 110 kilometers an hour along the Mediterranean coast, have caused flooding in multiple areas, including the Jerusalem region, Route 90 towards Eilat, Netanya, the Judean desert, and the Dead Sea area. Several people were rescued after the vehicles became stranded in high water. Emergency crews also treated a number of individuals for light injuries caused by falling tree branches. Intense winds and thunderstorms and heavy rain are expected to continue in northern and central Israel throughout the night. A Palestinian woman in the Shufat camp in East Jerusalem was reported killed after being struck by a heavy object during flooding of her home. And that ends this update here on ILTV. You can, of course, check our app. Just scan that barcode on your screen. Thanks for joining us.
as a people, we live with the light and the dark like side by side. Like that's truly how it is, and that's how I feel. And I think that's that's every day for me. Like, how did I go to bed after a day down south and it's like darkness. And then like the sun comes up in the morning and then like, okay, Chen, you need to get up. Like you need to face it. And they really just live side by side. And I think that with life, like that's how I think like every day. I think it's like there's darkness and there's light, and one doesn't really live without the other, and they just exist.
Hello and welcome back to the ILTV podcast. I'm Ayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV, and we are so happy to welcome back our viewers and our listeners. We have with us a very talented and special guest today, Chen Schimmel, an Israeli-based photojournalist originally from the United Kingdom. Welcome, Chen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, Chen, I want us to get started by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell me how you first picked up that camera and when you knew that photography was your thing.
So I was born in London, as you mentioned. I lived there for 18 years and then I made Aliyah, always wanting to live in Israel. I remember from a very young age just having that the Zionism runs in our veins at home. My mother was born in Switzerland and made Aliyah at the age of 16 alone. So my brothers did the army and so did I. But before that, the photography, for as long as I can remember, I honestly can't pinpoint like a moment where I picked up a camera and was like, this is what I want to do. I think it was just like a natural thing that happened. Street photography, just capturing moments. And then I felt that I needed more meaning to the photography. And that's really when the journalism, when I took on the journalism and incorporated that into my photography, and that happened when I already lived in Israel.
Now, you said you were born in London and raised there, and your entire family actually over time has come here to live in Israel. Talk about that Zionism in your childhood, and when you say it runs in your veins, what does that mean?
So my mother is Swiss, and then she chose to move to Israel when she was 16, and she went to a boarding school on her own, and then she drafted to the army. She was a paramedic in the army. She met my father in Israel, and then he moved her to England. But she always still wanted to return. She knew that, one day when she would have a family and she would have children, that we would return to Israel. And so it was really just ingrained in us through my mother. Also my father, his parents were Holocaust survivors. So the love for Israel and the love for a land for the Jewish people was very much also, conversation at home. And so that's really where it came from, I'd say, from my mother mainly, and also from my father.
And now you mentioned that your brothers and yourself, you all did the army. Mm-hmm. During this last 2+ years of war, were your brothers serving in the army? And if so, what were they doing?
Yeah. So I have one brother who is younger than I am. He's currently now almost done 11 months in Gaza. And he drafted 2 months before October 7th. So he wasn't even finished training when he was called in to do the, unimaginable. And then I have an older brother who served in the army for about 7 years. He had finished, but he was called back as a reserve for Miluim. And then another brother who, on the 7th, my 2 elder brothers, were called back. So 3 brothers at the same time.
And all of them serving in Gaza?
One of them more in the Judea and Samaria region, but yeah.
Wow. And how did that impact the work that you were doing? We're going to start talking about your book pretty soon, but just to give our viewers a little bit of a teaser, obviously you've been photographing what the people and the places of October 7th and onwards for the last couple of years. So talk a little bit about what your brothers then were doing, then how that impacted you, knowing that they were serving in one way, and how that sort of drove you to serve.
So on October 7th, I remember it like it was yesterday, I'm sure, like many people, but we were in the shelter at home, and my brother, who was my younger brother, who was serving, had to run and get his phone. So he ran to get his phone and he came back into the shelter, no one really knowing what was happening at this point. And I just remember him saying, dead soldiers' bodies everywhere. And we thought he was not saying things that were true, until the day went on and on and on. And we understood, the extent of the massacre. And my brothers left immediately. And I think that on that day or the day following, I knew exactly that that's their duty, and my duty is to document whatever is happening. I don't know what will be tomorrow, months from now, years from now, but I know that this is our people's history unfolding, and my part in it was to document.
Wow. Now I want to talk about your book, October 7th. It's called October 7th, Bearing Witness, and it really captures photographs from, if I understand, the first year of the war. But I'm wondering for you what it was like emotionally to capture the pain. And I remember, the pain of the last couple of years has been tremendous, certainly that first year. But also there was like these incredible stories of resilience and of hope. And how were you able to balance the two, and for yourself personally and emotionally, and also inside the photographs?
So when I started documenting, I went down south and joined Zaka, and I documented Zaka. So if you're talking about pain and darkness and the devastation, that is going into it, And in the beginning,
if you don't mind me interrupting, how did you find Zaka? How did you decide to join them?
So I knew I wanted to document immediately after, as I said, but it was impossible. It was blocked off by the army, and I didn't have the right equipment. I didn't have the helmet or the vest, and soldiers across the country were trying to get these equipment too. And my father, actually, who had never volunteered with Zaka before, decided that that's what he wanted to do. That was his part in this whole thing. And I remember him going down south to clean, like a few days before I went. And then he returned, and I said to him, the next time you're going, I'm coming with, because I need to document what's happening. And not many people were documenting Zaka, I think. Right. And so I joined them. And that's how I, through that, was able to document and go down to the kibbutzim.
So now continue about the emotions, the resilience, the hope, and the pain.
So in the beginning, in those few days that I documented in Be'eri, I went back a few times. There was no resilience. There was no light, and there was no hope. It was really just like the darkest that you could even imagine. But as I went back, each time, it was still painful. But every time, even in the birds singing, the first time I went, there was it was silence. It was like life had been shattered, in the middle of itself. And then each time I went back, the birds were singing, or there was a little patch of grass that I noticed that had suddenly started to regrow, or even the light, the natural light that was coming through the windows. It was just, each time the pain doesn't fade, but it kind of there's healing. So that was very interesting. And then much later, when I had decided to do a book, which I didn't know I was going to do a book to begin with, that's when I really realized, okay, there needs to be a documentation of resilience. And that's when I started to photograph, the soldiers who were, learning to walk again, or, evacuees coming back home, hostages returning.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you find your subjects? How did you decide?
Wasn't hard to find, honestly. It was everywhere. Everywhere you looked was just, there were things to document. But after I'd gone down south to the kibbutzim, so at that point I was freelancing. Then J-Post, reached out, asked if I could do a project with them, and they asked me to do a project on volunteering, because there was so much in the beginning of the war. And I actually said, that's beautiful. I will do that eventually, but right now the most important thing is the hostage families. And so that's really when I started. That's when I got in touch with a lot of subjects, and really had the access to all the hostage families and other people.
Incredible. Now, as a photographer, when you think you've written this, you freeze these moments in time. A picture is a moment frozen in time. And I'm wondering, for yourself, are they frozen in your head? Are these pictures that then are stuck inside your head forever? Do they evolve? Do you distance yourself from them over time? How does it work for you?
So they're definitely ingrained in my mind. Actually, when you ask me that question, I think of a very specific photograph in the book. I named it God's Rays and Buckets. And it's of a photograph of Be'eri, of a family who had come back to their home, a home that had been completely burnt out. 7 members of the family from this home were dragged out of the window and taken hostage. I can actually say that 7 have returned. Yeah, it really is. But they had come back, cousins of the family had come back to kind of search through what had remained, the ash and the rubble, anything that remained, basically. And so I was there, and I was photographing the darkness of it and just the smoke, and it was just... and then while I was photographing, you see this beam of light coming through the window and kind of a spotlight on them and what they were doing. And at the time, as a photographer, I'm chasing light, like natural light the whole time. I never use flash. I'm always like, light is my focus. So because of that contrast of the light and the darkness, I took that photograph. But with time, that photograph is really just a complete embodiment of this entire book and of our people. It's really finding the light in the darkness. And as a people, that's what we do. That's how we're able to just like grow and just keep moving forward with people that are, hostage families who wake up every morning in hell. Like, how do they, keep going? So it's really that light and the darkness. And with my photographs, I really over time see like kind of different elements to the photographs.
And you see the story unfold.
Yeah.
Are you able to find that photograph for us by any chance?
Yes.
Maybe.
I think so.
We'll take a quick look at it. We'll try to hold it up to the camera. Yeah, I went down to Bay Area many times right after as well.
Sure.
And it's, just to see your photographs brings so much to life. I think anybody who's been there, and anybody who hasn't, but especially if someone has been there to see the way you managed to capture it, it's really riveting. So let's see that picture. There's a camera kind of behind me. Try me hold it up and let people see.
So this is that photograph of the family.
Wow, unbelievable. There's so much darkness and yet the light coming through the window exactly as you described, and incredible. And we'll make it bigger for everybody on the screen. Maybe pick another photograph, not one you necessarily have to show us now, but that you can talk about something that was really meaningful to you in these many pictures in the book.
Wow, very difficult. I think that, okay, so there is, towards the end of the book, there were pieces of the story that I felt were missing. I don't like to pose my subjects. I'm very much there to capture the moment. I want to be kind of unseen. But there were things that were missing and things that I had to plan. And I knew that I wanted to photograph Rachel and John.
Mm-hmm. Goldberg-Pollen, for anybody who doesn't know, the parents of Hirsch Goldberg-Pollen.
Yeah. I knew I wanted to photograph them, and this was actually after they had found out what had happened to him. So in August, I think. And how on earth do you approach people that have literally are going through hell? But I was able to reach out to them, and they were willing to be photographed. So the photograph of them in this book is actually the first time they were photographed after what had happened. And I have never been so nervous to photograph something in my life, ever. And I remember just feeling like so nauseous and just like not knowing how to approach it. But I met them, and just immediately I felt this like, just this calm, they're the kindest, most like gentle human beings. And I'm photographing them, and Rachel, you know how she like stands and she has this demeanor and she has this like composure and like this look in her eye when she's photographed. She knows like how, but she wasn't feeling too comfortable that day. She was like kind of like fidgeting and wasn't really sure. And she just said like, Chen, I don't know how to, like, I need you to help me to like how to stand. Tell me how to stand and be. And I was like, Rachel, I just want you to stand how you feel. And she fell into John's arms. And that is the photograph that I have here. And it's her resilience is like no other. But also that, the need to just like fall into each other, which is also what we do as a people. So I really think that it's really that moment, and that photograph has stayed with me.
Chen, when you went down south so soon after the war started, were you afraid?
No. I think that also to be a photojournalist, something about you needs to have that like fearlessness maybe. But, I went into Gaza a few times, and I also didn't have that fear. I don't know why. I think, I was surrounded by our soldiers and I felt very safe. But it's like something about the importance of what I'm doing kind of like overrides the fear. But no, maybe the fear of like, what am I going to see? I don't know what I'm going to see, when I went down with Zaka. But once I was there, it was, very difficult, but I was okay.
And you were on a mission.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that also, going down with Zaka. Zaka, as you mentioned, we have many rescue organizations. We have United Hatzalah, we have Magen David Adom. These are first responders. But Zaka is unique because Zaka goes down in order to help find the dead, the blood, the body parts, the people, to help them get identified. They work in the Forensic Institutes. It's a very different rescue organization because they're rescuing the dead and not trying to salvage and hopefully help the living. What was it like being with them there in the field? What were they saying? What were you feeling?
I'm like emotional when you ask that question, because they're like, I can't even explain it. What they do is like, it's holy work. And one of my photographs, I named it that. And in 2024, it was chosen as Photo of the Year.
Was chosen by who?
Edut Mekumit. It's like the annual photojournalist, like you can call it competition. I'm not sure. But being there in the darkest place where so much horror has happened, there's something very holy about it in what they do. And they're just very humble and very quiet in the way that they work. And we actually, it was in December, so 2 months after, Zaka was called after the first rain had fallen of the season, because the rain fell, and in this one home in Be'eri, it drowned the whole floor and uncovered a whole layer of ash to reveal like a whole house drenched in blood. And so they called them back, and so I joined them. A house where 15 people were murdered. That's actually the front cover of the book, is from this house.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And so we went, and they spent hours and hours on their hands and knees cleaning. And I actually took a moment to the side. I had to put my camera down for a second. Happens. And I just start to hear like this whisper of like a few people. And then the whisper turns into like this louder sound, and then this like belting sound, and they all get up from their hands and knees, and they're singing in a circle. They're singing Anima Amin, which is I have faith with all my being. And there's a photograph of it in the book as well, and it's the most holy. There's no other word for it. They're like angels on earth, honestly.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's interesting. We just had this terror attack in Australia, and Yossi Landau directed the mission. And I remember he was like the main English speaker down in Be'eri, a Zaka volunteer. And whenever the journalists would go down, he'd be the first to interview them, and did so many interviews with him. And then they said, oh yeah, call the Zaka team, and you can do some interviews of the first responders on the ground in Australia. And they said, call Yossi. Didn't say. So I called the number, and he answers, and he's talking to me. He said, what's your last name? He says, Landau. I said, oh my God. I'm like, it's crazy. Like to think, 2 years ago, this man, like how these people can keep going and going. They were there in the rawest of October 7th and landed 24 hours later in the rawest of Australia, and they just keep going back. And he said, yeah, just like you, he said, I'm on a mission.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing man. So, you speak about the darkness and you speak about the light, and you were using these metaphors before about finding the light in the darkness, but it's a metaphor, but it's also very true as a photographer.
Yeah.
You're maybe not using your flash, but you're looking for the light in order to make the pictures come to life, because otherwise without light there's no photograph. So talk to me about how that then impacts you when you put the camera down. Do you learn those lessons? How does that apply to your life?
Like, how does the technical side of it?
How does the light and the darkness play into what you do day to day? Because as a person, because it's like you've got the technical side of it, you're doing it. You've got the work you talk about. I'm getting the light and the darkness, and it's a beautiful story. But you have to keep living. You go day to day. How do you do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the beginning, I actually thought that it's like you have the darkness, and then the light comes through. Which in some cases it does happen, but in the last few months especially, I think it hit me when Daniel Peretz,
Rabbi.
Rabbi Daniel Peretz. So his Rabbi Doron Peretz, his son.
That's right.
His son. It's a tragic story. I won't go into too much detail, but his son was buried twice. Essentially, there were 2 funerals, and I went to both funerals. And at that funeral, there was a released hostage that was present, and there was also the parents of a hostage who was still in Gaza. So in that one funeral, you had every aspect of our nation in this one funeral, but there was a released hostage, so there was hope as well. And it was in that funeral where I really realized that it's not like that you have darkness and then the light comes through. It's really, as a people, we live with the light and the dark side by side. That's truly how it is, and that's how I feel. And I think that's that's every day for me. How did I go to bed after a day down south, and it's darkness. And then the sun comes up in the morning, and then okay, Chen, you need to get up. You need to face it. And they really just live side by side. And I think that with life, that's how I think every day. I think it's there's darkness and there's light, and one doesn't really live without the other, and they just exist side by side. Yeah.
Oh, that's an incredible. It's even, I think, more profound than light inside the darkness. The light coming out of the darkness is the light and the darkness side by side.
Yeah.
It's very profound. So, Chen, you are actually doing something very interesting. You're dedicating all the proceeds from your book to the Drawer program, which is for soldiers with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Why was that cause so personal to you, and how does it connect to all of the themes of your book? Now that we better understand, of course, this long-term psychological impact of this war.
So I think it starts with personal. It starts with my brothers and my fiance, who's also just got called back actually for 2 months.
Wow,
But thank you. It's very personal, and my brothers are okay. But the trauma, everyone has some sort of trauma, right? And so I do have this fear that it will come with time. Like right now, my younger brother is in Gaza. He has to be present, and it could come when he's like released or whenever. I don't know, and it's so important for me to like protect him, but in a bigger scheme, to protect all the soldiers that have been through what we can't imagine. And speaking about light and darkness, there are some people that are just in the pitch black darkness. There are some soldiers that, because I'm involved with the summit program with Dror, there are soldiers that can't wake up in the morning and make themselves eggs. So it's so important because, without the soldiers, we don't have a country. We don't have Israel. So for me, it was like there are so many different ways in which we can help people that are affected. But for me, the soldiers was like really, it's like it's looking after the future, not just the now. So, yeah.
And certainly looking after the trauma. I mean, I was just reading the study. Natal had a study that came out about a month ago that was saying just even the cost of the war, that there were going to be around 3 million out of the 10 million Israelis suffering from some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, and that if we don't treat them now, it's going to cost the country 5 billion shekels over 5 years, or 500 billion shekels over 5 years. And, the crazy impact of this. And actually on Sunday, I was down in Modi'in. It's fascinating. The Cone Veterans Network is opening their first ever international program here in Israel for our soldiers to deal specifically with post-traumatic stress disorder, also very similar to Dror, but to do more hands-on short-term therapies. And we're seeing it's such a huge phenomenon, so it's an incredible impact. Now, you've captured the faces of hostage families, survivors, soldiers, and really entire communities in mourning. What responsibility comes with holding their stories in your hands, especially when a lot of these stories that you're capturing, they're not over, they're still unfolding?
Mm-hmm. I think that you mentioned hostage families. As I mentioned, Jerusalem Post asked if I would cover volunteering. And for me, it was like a month after the war, started. It was just so important for me, for the hostage families and the faces of the hostages to be at the front, like of the news. Like it had to be. And being a photographer, one of the biggest outlets, abroad out of Israel, it was like, that is the most important thing. So for me, when I started the project with hostage families, I very much felt this responsibility of okay, people need to know these faces. They need to know these names. And then as a whole, the book does feel like some sort of responsibility, responsibility to document. Being a photojournalist and documenting everything wasn't enough for me. I had to create this book, this physical testimony that I believe every home, every Jewish home should have, so that we can, never deny the events and also say never again.
Is it going well? Have you been able to get the book out there?
We just sold out in America.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we just sent out another round. It's doing well. It's doing very well abroad. I think in Israel, we live it. We live it every single day. And so abroad, people really need to feel that connection. They need something. So I think that it's, doing very well. Yeah.
And you can get it on Amazon? Where can you get it?
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and then on my website. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, was there a particular person or a specific moment that, I hate to ask this, but maybe that broke you, that really did tear you apart, or in converse, something that just gave you an extreme sense of hope that you didn't know you could have?
Yes. Yes to both. But a moment where I broke, it was while I was photographing and interviewing hostage families. I photographed the mother of Eden Zacharia. So Eden was taken from the festival. And this was in December, so it was like a week before Hanukkah. And I went to interview and photograph her. And after I'd finished photographing, she asked me if I wanted to stay for a cup of tea. And so I was like, yes, of course. I hesitated for a moment and I was like, Chen, come on, you're a human being before a photographer, like say yes. So I put my camera to the side and we sat on the couch and then we were like talking about, I don't even remember what, like nothing and everything. And then she started to play with my hair. She was just like going like this to my hair. And I think that in that moment she really missed her daughter. And she said to me that the last night of Hanukkah is Eden's birthday. And the greatest gift and miracle, like Hanukkah miracle, would be if she came home to me. So I left. And then 4 days later, I think it was like during Hanukkah, she messaged me and she was like, my Eden is coming home, but she's not coming home alive. And then she was buried on her birthday. And I went to that funeral and I just like, I broke down because it was like closer. It was like closer to home. It was more personal. And it was also different to any other funeral. It was like overlooking the sea in Palmachim. And it was like tiny. It was a tiny funeral, like hardly any press. So it felt like, it was a breaking kind of moment. But speaking of hope, her mother, Orin, is now like giving lectures and just wrote a book. And she's incredible.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. We're going to run out of time. I want to ask you a couple more questions. Mostly looking at these past 2 years. Now you have your book captures the first year, but obviously your work has kept going over the course of the war. So what have they taught you, not just about war, but more about the people or the memory and the healing that this country can do?
It's taught me so much. I think it's taught me a lot about strength. And that strength doesn't necessarily mean like endurance or like just like powering through or just like to keep going. It means like, like falling on your own or falling, and being lifted by somebody else. And that's the way in which we heal, and it's like the most human thing. And I've seen it in every single, like with photographing every single thing, quite literally soldiers falling. There's a photograph in the book of a soldier, double amputee, kind of doing like this. It's called ninja in Israel, where they like swing. It's like he falls into a swimming pool after every time. He does it above a pool because that's how he like feels safe. And every time he gets out of this pool and falls, and this is after like hours and hours, and like I can't do that. And it's just the most incredible thing to see. And it's like, it's about falling, but it's about like getting up again, and it's about like taking the help. And I felt that for myself as a photographer, like not just to just go. I think in the beginning I was like, go. You have to like, like be human about it and just like be held by others as well and hold others.
Amazing. So finally, Israel is going to continue to live in this aftermath, this shadow of October 7th for a very long time. Tell me what your next project is, what your next dream is as a photographer. Where do we go from this book?
Wow. It's something I'm thinking about myself. If you would have asked me like a few months ago, it was to photograph every single hostage, returning, and there's still one. Halal. I don't know how to say that in
one deceased hostage.
Yes,
unfortunately.
To return. So I'm like waiting for that. And then it's like, I think it's the healing, it's going to the kibbutzim and photographing the people return or, more soldiers, healing, but it's really the growth and seeing what happens to the country.
So I hope that in a year from now we'll be able to do this again. You'll be able to share with us some of those stories of hope and resilience that are coming out in the aftermath of this very, very long war. Chen Shmuel, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much.
And joining us now with more on the protests in Iran and a possible U.S. and Israeli intervention is Nati Tubian, an expert on Iran. Nati, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we're hearing very troubling reports, seeing shocking video of hundreds, if not thousands of bodies lining the streets of Iran as the regime is opening live fire on the protesters and employing other measures as well against the Iranian people, taking out the internet. What is the situation in Iran right now, and are the protests showing any signs of dying down?
Just to put things in the correct order, the figure that you mentioned is probably much higher. I talked to an Iranian journalist, and he says that he fears that the number has already exceeds more than 10,000 killed by the regime.
Wow.
And I tend to believe him because in the riot, in the unrest, I think 7 years ago, due to the the price of the petrol, the gas that was tripled overnight, respectable news agencies reported that some 200, 300, or 500 Iranians were killed. But now, according to the recent data that we have received, the figure is around 5,000 kills 7 years ago. So probably the figures are much higher. This journalist with whom I'm in constant contact, he resides in Europe. Nothing to be worried about him, but he says that around 150 young Iranians, including married couples who have been married for, less than 2 months, have left wills with their pictures and testimonies and full details, and said they know that they are going to participate in the protests. They have no other choice, and they will probably not come back safe and sound. The married couple says that they didn't have the chance to go to the honeymoon, and this is going to be probably their honeymoon for Iran.
So really tragic stories that we're hearing from the Iranian people, and of course the figures that we have are not official, and estimates, as you said, the numbers are clearly much higher. Now the Islamic regime, they're not backing down. They're still opening live fire despite threats from the United States. Are the Ayatollahs still firmly in control of the country right now, or is there a real threat that they could fall in the coming days, weeks, or possibly months?
The picture is not clear, but seeing the response, I can deduce that this is clearly because of lack of sufficient soldiers for the regime to crack down the